Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going into the third episode of our story in which Naruto befriends Sasuke and Sakura at a young age through a stroke of fate. The three then set a goal to surpass the Sannin as the strongest shinobi team and uncover a mystery about Naruto's heritage that extends beyond the limits of the elemental nations, altering the course of history forever. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel after you watch the video. Let's get started. Hokage Mountain, 3 months later, early September, near sunset, Itachi Uchiha sat alone on the edge of the Hokage Mountain that had the faces of all the Kage of Konoha carved into it. Ironically, he was sitting on the edge of the head of Hiruzen Sarutobi. The Uchiha prodigy's face was impassive, but he was troubled by inner turmoil that threw his emotional equilibrium off balance. Even a prodigy shinobi of his caliber had his emotional limits. Itachi scoffed in annoyance. How he truly hated that title, the Uchiha prodigy. He was praised as the best Uchiha born in several decades, possibly since their founding in Konoha. Even by their high standards, he outclassed them in pretty much every way. Some called him one of the next legendary ninjas, like the Densetsu no Sannin, the late White Fang, and some even had the balls to even compare him to an Uchiha version of the Yondaime Hokage himself. The Uchiha heir couldn't help but chuckle at that last one. He knew he was good, but he knew the Yondaime at his current age, 13, would have run circles around him, even with his mastery of the Sharingan. There was no telling how big the gap would be had he fought him as an adult. A small chill crept up his spine at that thought. "Is that why you do this now, father?" Itachi asked himself as the wind blew his hair and loose articles of clothing as he stared at the setting sun. The late Hokage had practically won the war with Iwagakure by himself, and decimated nearly 1,000 of their forces single-handedly. As with the many grievances Fugaku and the elders had with their current situation, they knew that a rebellion when Minato was reigning would be tantamount to suicide. Now that he was deceased and the rapidly aging Hiruzen Sarutobi took his place, the elders thought this was their perfect chance. He had spoken with the Hokage 3 months ago, informing him of the situation. Although it pleased him that he had managed to convince the elders out of their absurd logic of dealing with the clan, he still had to make a choice. Could he do it? Could he really kill them? He began to review the events that led up to all this. Itachi was in the ANBU headquarters near the center of the village, doing some normal exercises, frantically trying to clear his head from his 3-month-long mission. It was an A-class mission, and to say Itachi had a bad feeling about its true nature was a complete understatement. His inner ramblings were cut short as a lone ANBU grunt with a bear mask appeared in front of him in a kneeling position. "Itachi Taicho, I bring word from Hokage-sama. He says he wishes to speak with you." "I'd say it's urgent," the grunt relayed to the prodigy. Itachi nodded. "Thank you, I'll be on my way, then." Without even sparing his subordinate a second glance, Itachi hastily made his way out of the ANBU headquarters. He got some curious looks from his fellow captains as well as their underlings, but he paid them no mind as he walked outside. He immediately took to the rooftops and headed directly for the Hokage Tower, which was about a 2-minute journey at his current pace. During those couple of minutes, Itachi allowed his mind to race at the possibilities of what the Hokage himself would want to see him personally about. Could it be a promotion? Itachi shook his head, dismissing it. Unless there was some secret rank that he didn't know about, which he highly doubted, ANBU captain was pretty much where the buck stopped for most ninja, unless they went straight to Kage. He snorted at the assertion. Him of all people? A Hokage at his age? It was inconceivable. A second possibility that ran through the raven-haired ANBU's head was a secret mission that Itachi was specifically needed for. That was certainly a possibility, as Jounin going on solo missions wasn't exactly common, but it wasn't unheard of. However, that did beg the question of why he couldn't have a team with him. Powerful, he was, but he wasn't foolish enough to delude himself into thinking that he was invincible due to how big the gap was between him and most of the shinobi his age. Itachi shook his head. There was no use in worrying about what the Sandaime wanted, because he was going to find out, literally, in the next minute or so. He landed in front of the Hokage tower, and let himself into the lobby, a bell chiming letting them know someone had entered. Itachi walked up to the secretary. "Ueda-san, I was requested by the Hokage to meet him here," he explained to the female at the front desk. Ueda nodded and started to look on a clipboard of a roster of people that the Hokage needed to meet with him and vice versa. Her fingers traced the names down and she nodded. "Ah, yes, Itachi Taicho, you're scheduled 5 minutes from now." She then blinked. "WoW has no more openings after you, strange," she uttered in thought, more to herself than Itachi. That tidbit of information alarmed the Uchiha as his warning bells blared rather loudly. Now he definitely knew this was a deadly serious matter. It was a well-known, but unspoken, fact that meetings with the Hokage were often brief, terse, and straight to the point. Most never last longer than half an hour. It was mid-afternoon, and according to Ueda, the Sandaime had no other meetings for the day. This meant that the Hokage had cancelled the rest. Just to speak with him. A bit of sweat dropped down the normally stoic Uchiha's face. He didn't know if the feeling he felt at the moment was fear, but, in the pit of his stomach, he knew something was off. "I've got a bad feeling about this," Itachi thought, as he thanked the girl and made his way towards the god of Shinobi's office. He forced himself to calm down to stop his heart from racing. He was a shinobi, a model one, at that. Even though this was the Hokage, he had no reason to fear him. Itachi was about to knock on the door before a voice stopped him. "Come on in, Itachi," came the voice of Hiruzen. It was neutral in tone, a fact that secretly pissed off the Uchiha heir. Now, he couldn't go in knowing what to expect. With a small sigh, Itachi gathered the courage to open the door and then shut it behind him. Before him was a sight that he had not expected to see. Before him was not only the Hokage, but his advisors and former teammates Koharu Udatane, Hamura Mitokado, and his eyes widened ever so slightly Danzo Shimura. Collectively, these 4 individuals were, without question, the most powerful people in the village, some in the political sense, others in terms of skill as a shinobi, and some both. They were all staring intently at him and he could have sworn that Koharu and Hamura were slightly glaring at him. However, Hiruzen and Danzo were looking at him critically with a touch of indifference. "Itachi, sit down," Hiruzen commanded, to which the Uchiha did so without hesitation. Something was definitely up. "I'm going to be blunt, Itachi-san," Hamura started to say before dropping the bombshell. "We know." Itachi's eyes widened greatly as he sat in shock. They knew? How? They had made it apparent to keep everything about it secret. Danzo narrowed his eyes. "So it would seem, judging from your reaction, that our suspicions were indeed correct. Your clan is trying to start a coup d'état for reasons yet unknown," he said flatly. "I must say, I didn't want to believe the initial reports, but it seems that they are indeed true," Hiruzen told him gravely. Itachi couldn't help but hold his head in shame. "So I take you brought me here to execute me?" Itachi said in a solemn voice which inwardly surprised all 4 elders present. The boy wasn't known to show emotion, at all. "No, not at all," Hiruzen replied, which caused the boy to look at them in surprise. Hamura cleared his throat. "We've discussed this many times over the past few weeks, and we've decided that the entire clan surely isn't responsible for this. Are we right in that assumption?" Itachi faintly nodded. "Only the Uchiha elders, nearly all of the police force, my father, and myself are aware of it. My mother and the children are entirely ignorant of what he was planning." Koharu raised an eyebrow, while Danzo narrowed an eye as she spoke. "He, you say? It sounds to me as if you were unwilling in their scheme." Itachi nodded. "I was," he admitted. "Tell me, Itachi, why didn't you come forward with this the minute you found out that Fugaku was committing treasonous acts?" the Hokage asked calmly. The Uchiha prodigy sighed. "Because, Hokage-sama, I was going to try and stop it, myself. I was hoping that I could convince my father that we didn't have to do this." He wasn't having it. He believed me to be the key to bringing the village under his control, be making me Hokage, Itachi revealed. Surprisingly, the four elders kept their composure, but Itachi knew from years of experience that they were experiencing emotional turmoil at that particular revelation. That's the gist of it, and I was honestly going to come here and tell you outright, but being an ANBU captain has its toll on you, he cryptically remarked as a vocal afterthought. Hiruzen hummed. I see, he neutrally responded and leaned back into his chair. For the record, Itachi, I do believe what you are saying and that you have no genuine desire to plunge us into a state of civil war. Danzo spoke up after that. However, he began dangerously, these actions will not go unpunished. Itachi simply nodded, expecting this, but his mind was racing for a loophole so he could possibly save the lives of his foolish clansmen. They were walking into a slaughter almost on the level of the Kaguya attack on the mist years ago. Hokage-sama, honored elders, what if I gave you my services? I spy on them for you and give any and all information pertaining to their plans. Maybe I can convince them to call it off, sparing my clan and you keeping a powerful asset. Using the word ally at that moment would have killed his entire proposal almost instantly. Hiruzen pondered this request. On a small technicality, they hadn't committed treason yet. They were simply planning it. Although to most shinobi that didn't mean a goddamn thing, Hiruzen, either through utterly asinine reasoning or being a naive idealist, wanted to avoid bloodshed through any way possible. His mantra of peace through negotiation might very well end him one day. Itachi, when would you say this coup would take place, by your estimate? The Hokage asked. If I were to put a timetable on it. 6 months, he hollowly responded. All four of the village elders looked at each other in a pensive silence. Hamura turned to Itachi to address him. You believe that now you can convince them not to go through with it, when you've been unsuccessful in the past? Hamura all but yelled. Frankly, I highly doubt it. Itachi clenched his fists. Damn it, he wasn't getting anywhere. Danzo allowed a small, twisted smile to come to his face. Oh, Hamura, I believe Itachi may indeed succeed, knowing what will happen if he fails. As expected, the Uchiha looked a bit alarmed. Don't fret, Itachi-san, Koharu began. Do not mistake us for being unaware of our misgivings when it came to actions concerning your clan over the past 4 decades. Itachi visibly relaxed, but also a bit bewildered that the elders would openly admit a mistake on their part. Thank you, elder, he expressed gratefully. However, Koharu began seriously. As much as the blame falls upon us, we cannot and will not allow these events to spiral out of control, should negotiations fail. That, my dear boy, is where you come in. Itachi's eyes widened to their greatest extent, catching on almost immediately to what they were implying. You want me to kill my own father and my own clansmen? Itachi inquired in absolute shock. Believe me, I don't like it any more than you do, Itachi, Hiruzen admitted. He seriously hoped that Itachi could manage to convince the clan to stop their suicidal actions. Somehow, though, he highly doubted he would succeed. That fact alone was probably the most depressing to the Fire Shadow. Itachi growled. What if I refuse? He replied flatly, in disgust. The alternative is far worse, I assure you, Danzo evenly intoned. What do you mean by that? Itachi asked, as his respectful tone was starting to wither away little by little. Itachi, the fire daimyo knows as well, Hiruzen explained, which nearly caused the ANBU captain to lose all composure. He's not as merciful as we are at the moment. He declares that if your coup succeeds, then everything will be thrown off balance and a 4th Great Shinobi World War is inevitable. In other words, his solution was to deal with all of you. Itachi gritted his teeth. So damned if I do, damned if I don't? You're insinuating I have to either slaughter my entire clan or simply slaughter those involved in it, including my own brother? Hiruzen nodded gravely, before the Uchiha sighed and slumped a bit in his chair. The nit hit him. Like a ton of bricks, it hit him. He smirked a bit. It was time to show why he was known as the greatest Uchiha since the days of Madara Uchiha. Hokage-sama, I don't mean to be rude, but these plans of yours are highly flawed, Itachi declared. All sets of eyebrows in the room shot up. In what way? Speak, Hamura all but demanded. Itachi smiled a bit knowingly. It was time to lay down the smackdown. Ironically, their solution had been his loophole into a way out of this sort of. It's simple. Have any of you thought about the sheer logistics, resources, and manpower it would take to slaughter my entire clan? I'm merely stating a commonly accepted fact here which, if you paid attention in history, you'd know. My clan was the direct rivals of the now near-extinct Senju clan. To muster up a force to eliminate every single one would require an enormous effort, possibly equaling the entire village or a group of Kage-level shinobi. Tell Mato you have such a force at your disposal? He asked, a bit rhetorically. Hamura narrowed his eyes. Our ANBU couldn't do a damn thing, Itachi interjected, before continuing. I'm an ANBU captain, Elder. I'm well aware of their capabilities, but most of our members aren't well aware of each other's abilities because we get rotated so often. Sometimes, only being together for a single mission. You're telling me you want to pit the ANBU against the Uchiha clan, which currently has over 300 battle-capable members who are well aware of each other's abilities and could effectively work together against a division that practically knows absolutely nothing about each other? And that's without the Sharingan being a factor, Itachi explained. Hiruzen, Koharu, and Hamura had to stare at the boy in shock, while Danzo had to smile at the boy's utter genius. Not only was he laying down the facts of why their plan wouldn't succeed, simultaneously he was giving information about the clan, which added more weight and credibility that he wanted peace instead of war that his clan's plans would surely cause. Truly brilliant. Now, I'm not saying that the ANBU won't win. However, if you do, you will have a lot of casualties, almost to a Pyrrhic victory. In your haste to eliminate all of us, you'd simply cripple the entire ANBU division, which would leave the village vulnerable, almost irrevocably. In essence, in trying to keep the peace by eliminating my clan before they can cause actions that will plunge us into the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, you'd ironically trigger the event. Anyhow, considering your entire Black Ops divisions would be slaughtered along with my clan, Itachi noted, which caused all four to cringe. The boy was making them look like utter fools. Itachi noticed this and inwardly smirked, triumphant in his victory. Now it was time to hammer it in home. Let me ask you this. Tell me, how would the civilians react if they saw an entire shinobi force wiping out an entire clan? Keep in mind, they are completely unaware of what our crimes are. They will get the wrong idea, and think we're performing a purge. If you tell them beforehand, then, of course, my entire clan knows the jig's up, and we would attack the village outright. If you don't tell them in an effort for the Uchiha to not know, then you go back to square one. Silence reigned as the logic of the Uchiha prodigy started to sink in. By the gods, what were we thinking? Hiruzen thought solemnly. You make an excellent case, Itachi, and I'll admit. Even I didn't take those into account, Danzo flat out conceded. Denying his own mistakes and lack of foresight served no purpose to the war hawk. When it came to matters of the village, his pride went out the window in favor of protecting it at any cost. If that meant he had to give in to the logic of a 13-year-old boy, then so be it. Hokage-sama, I know you don't suspect me to succeed in convincing my clan. Hell, I don't believe I will either, but, in case I don't, he then sighed, my options are either slaughter the entire clan or simply take out the ringleaders. Hiruzen nodded. Yes. The word of the daimyo is law. Even I can't overturn it. The brunette wonder growled in frustration. If the daimyo had already given the edict, then what the hell was the point of him trying to find a peaceful solution? Granted, he doubted said solution could be found, regardless, but even still. Do any of you four have any idea of the fallout this will cause for me? For my mother? His voice grew soft, my brother, a lone tear rolled down his cheek. We are sorry it had to come to this, Koharu sincerely said. It was at times like these where she truly hated herself, when she had to pick her poison and choose the lesser of two evils. Very well, then, Itachi said suddenly. He got surprised looks from all four of them. I'll do it, I'll bear the burden for the sake of the village, they all slowly consented with a bob of their heads. Thank you, Itachi, again we are sorry. But, he began again, I'm not doing this without something from you all in return. Name them, Hiruzen instantly replied. Danzo narrowed his eyes, as he could already see where this was headed. Firstly, for the sake of the clan's honor, you will not disclose of the reasoning of the killings toward the public ever. Hiruzen's eyes widened. But Itachi, that would mean, yes, I know. It would mean I'd have to become a missing nin. You're tasking me to kill all the members of the plot, which I'm capable of, yes, but, undoubtedly, some of the members unaware will see me. Since I refuse to kill innocent blood, they would no longer trust me, and rightfully so. So in a cover story, I will say that I attacked the elders and my father to test the limits of my strength, and, considering my clan's reputation, that excuse shouldn't be that hard for the public to accept. Are you sure? Hiruzen had to inquire, just to make sure he heard that correctly. Itachi nodded. I am. It's the only conceivable way this whole ordeal can end without the entire village and the elemental nations being plunged into war. They bobbed their heads in agreement. Itachi's eyes then narrowed greatly. Now for my second concession from you, for despite all this, I want guarantees that the reasoning this whole thing started in the first place will be squashed. Hamura raised a brow. By that, you mean? This will not be unilateral. This village will concede something. For nearly 40 decades we were treated as if we didn't matter. We never enjoyed the spoils of war, so to speak, from the gains Konoha made over the years, despite the fact that we've had Uchiha die for the village's sake just like you all have done. This council has treated us with scorn, and yet you find it surprising that we are acting now? Did you foolishly think that they'd sit and take it forever? Itachi inquired in anger. Yes. Danzo roared back. Because of Uchiha Madara, do you not realize that he is dead? Dead. You're going to punish the entire clan for what one misguided fool did. You're willing to spare my clan and ask me to assassinate the individuals responsible for our current problems, stating that the clan as a whole is not responsible for the decisions made by a few individuals, and yet you continue to hold my clan responsible for the action of one man who died nearly half a century ago? Are you even aware of your own hypocrisy? Hiruzen sighed. I know, Itachi, I know. It has been unfair and I foolishly turned a blind eye. The surveillance on your clan increased after the attack of the Kyubi the first time over 60-some-odd years ago, because there were few men who were able to control it, including the Uchiha. We didn't have enough evidence, but our fear turned into paranoia, and my sensei compromised with the council at the time, and segregated you from the rest of the village. And he agreed? Based on no proof, but sheer fear and paranoia? How utterly pathetic, Itachi scorned the late Tobirama Senju. The elders were about to reply, but Hiruzen silenced them all, indicating from now on, he was talking. Itachi, I'll make up for this. The Uchiha clan, if they wish, can move back into the village as well as keep the land they were forced to move to entirely to themselves, too. They will also be given monetary compensation, as well. Are those terms agreeable? Itachi stood up. Yes, they are. He flared his Sharingan and glared intently at all of them. I warn you, no, if you even go back on even one of our deals, then I'll simply expose everything, he warned, with an edge to his voice. Surprisingly, they all showed no fear towards the Uchiha prodigy, at least outwardly. I will, Itachi, have my word. Itachi turned off his dojutsu, and then bowed. Am I dismissed? I have much to prepare for, the Hokage nodded, and Itachi left the four to their own devices. He had no doubt of what they were discussing when he vanished in a swirl of leaves. I truly am sorry, Sasuke, Itachi solemnly apologized to no one as he stared at the sunset. He knew what he was about to do would likely have his younger sibling hate him for the rest of his days. He didn't know what to do. If he spent more time with him, then that meant that the betrayal would cut deeper. If he decided to simply ignore him like he, admittedly, mostly did, then he likely would want revenge on him. It was the perfect lose-lose situation. Itachi heaved a heavy sigh and stood up. He'd have plenty of time to ponder all the repercussions. Right now, he needed to get into a state of mind where he could willingly kill the traitors to the village that he had given an oath to protect. What his father was doing was wrong. Completely and utterly wrong. Despite his rant towards the elders, that still didn't give them justification for slaughtering hundreds like they had planned on doing. His conscience eased for the moment. The Uchiha prodigy leaped off the Hokage monument, heading towards his clan's estate. Next day, 0835 hours, Naruto's apartment. Naruto was already up, still in his pajamas, but fully awake and aware. The blonde busily did his morning exercises, which consisted of push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, and pull-ups. It was nothing too strenuous. It was just enough to get his blood pumping so he could feel ready to start the day. While the blonde was doing push-ups, he thought about the changes in himself over the past 6 months since he had met Sasuke and Sakura, and subsequently when Mikoto became their sensei. In all honesty, she was starting to become less of a teacher, but more of a mother. Not just him, but for all three of them, really. The Jinchuriki wiped some sweat of his brow as he stood to his full height of 4 feet and 6 inches. After his sensei had beat a proper diet in him, he had shot on up to where he should have been, had he not been constantly eating ramen his whole life. The fridge was stocked with enough fruits, vegetables, and grains to make a dietitian blush. Now, he was 2 inches taller than Sasuke and Sakura, who were near the same height, more or less. It was September now, and Sasuke had turned 9 in July. He would turn 9 that October, and Sakura, the youngest of the trio, would turn 9 in March. Naruto walked towards his bathrooms to completely strip naked and stepped into the shower. He turned the water on without even bothering to let it warm up. Considering that Mikoto trained them rain or shine, and the showers of Mother Nature were far more brutal, the frigid temperatures barely even fazed the Uzumaki. Naruto closed his eyes as he began a mental checklist of everything he or they, rather, had learned. She had drilled into them constant teamwork during parts of the day, and made 2 clones that taught them individual skills. Sakura's near-perfect chakra control allowed her to grasp the concept and application of genjutsu far easier than he or Sasuke could. He shuddered a bit, remembering some of the illusions his pink-haired friend had put him and his best friend under. So far, he was unsuccessful in making a genjutsu to her caliber, but he had the ability to dispel genjutsu at the C-rank level, which was a huge accomplishment considering his age and lack of training prior until then. Taijutsu, however, was an entirely different ball game. That was where he shined the most, by far. His growth spurt also came with better reach, and added power to his strikes. He had durability, the stamina, and the powers to take on both Sasuke and Sakura simultaneously and still come out on top. Sakura, naturally, had one advantage over him: flexibility. He didn't know what the hell his sensei taught her while they weren't looking, but damn was she great at using her dexterity at dodging his blows and sometimes leaping over his high kicks and using his leg as leverage for her own next attack. Sasuke, while not as good as he was catching up pretty fast. Lastly, there was ninjutsu. Naruto had to smirk. In what the academy wasted time for 4 years on, Mikoto had managed to teach them the Bunshin no Jutsu, clone technique, Kawarimi no Jutsu, substitution technique, and the Henge no Jutsu, transformation technique, in 1 week. Granted, the academy had in excess of over 30 or so students in one class or so, and the trio of future assassins had potential that far exceeded their peers. It was still ridiculous. Funny how I was the last one to learn the Bunshin no Jutsu, all because I was applying it the wrong way, Naruto mused to himself as he finally felt the water heat up, and he began washing himself up, hair included. He heard the fox snort. Leave it to you to think that you couldn't do the technique because you thought you had too much chakra. Naruto immediately took mock offense to that. Hey! I had a perfectly valid reason for that, he tried to argue with his tenant. He was thankful he was alone. Everyone else would think he was batshit insane. Really? The fox retorted, a bit bemused. Mikoto-sensei, I don't think I can learn this technique because I have too much chakra, he mocked him from the excuses the blonde used. When, in fact, you just didn't have proper control over it. Good thing she taught you three how to climb trees, otherwise, you'd probably be still stuck in that delusion that having too much chakra means certain techniques are off limits to you. He grunted, but conceded that the Kyuubi was right. Speaking of climbing trees, surprisingly, he and Sasuke didn't take that long after Sakura who, unsurprisingly, reached the top on her first try. How in the hell does she have such natural control? The blonde asked a bit more to himself, but he wouldn't have minded if his tenant had an answer. You didn't see what she did? The fox asked. Naruto raised an eyebrow, closing his eyes so the water could wash out the shampoo in his hair. Enlighten me. Before she went up the tree, unlike you two, who went gung-ho and started climbing, she smartly walked up to the tree, applied some chakra to her feet as she lifted one foot up and tested how much was needed in order her to stick to it without either breaking or being pushed off, the fox explained. Naruto's jaw dropped and he dropped his soap as he paled. Are you kidding me right now? He groaned, as he banged his head on the shower door. Me and Sasuke spent 5 days on that while we could have spent 5 minutes on it. Comical tears rolled down his face. The Kyuubi grinned. Why of course. She did the intelligent thing, while you two morons simply just winged it until you got to the top. Naruto gritted his teeth. Why didn't you tell me? He yelled in faux anger. He could hear the fox simply scratching his ears. It amused me, he replied dully. Gah! You're useless. Naruto countered back as he stepped out of the shower. Well, if it's any consolation, she was the second one to learn that fire jutsu she taught you three, he pointed out, to which Naruto did have to nod in agreement. That was about 2 months ago. The current trio were having a 3-way taijutsu match, which was nothing short of a spectacle of a sight to behold. Mikoto was observing all of them and pointing out weaknesses in their moves and styles. Sakura flipped over Sasuke, using his shoulders as support, and she kicked back with both feet, making him stagger backward. She narrowly dodged a punch from the blonde and tried to counter with an uppercut, but this was blocked and she was struck in the face by a blow from his free hand. They both stood back from each other, breathing a bit hard. Although her chakra and stamina had nearly tripled, Sakura still wasn't in the same league as Naruto in that area. She smirked in between tired breaths. Glad you're not taking it easy on me because I'm a girl, Naruto-kun. Naruto grinned back at her. What good would that do you, Sakura-chan? I consider you my equal and it would be a bit reproachful of me to hold back due to your gender. Sakura smiled, as a blush came to her cheeks. That was Naruto for you, the perfect gentleman. Maybe that's what she liked about him so much. Her eyes widened at that thought. Did she really? Her inner thoughts were cut short as she felt her legs being swept off the ground. Hope you didn't forget about me, Sakura, Sasuke said, smirking from his position as he swept the girl. Sakura grinned at him. Actually, Sasuke-kun, I didn't, she replied back to the Uchiha Scion. Before the rosette-haired girl could reach the ground, she landed on her hands and kicked at his chin. He dodged, barely, by doing a somersault. The Uchiha was about to grin triumphantly, when he dodged a kick by Naruto on pure reflex alone. Ha! You've gotten better at dodging those, Naruto complimented before the two boys began duking it out, going all out, with Naruto having the edge and Sasuke barely holding his own. His lack of reach compared to Naruto's really was key to the blonde's advantage. Before too long, the Haruno was in on the fray. Mikoto couldn't help but to have her mouth drop at what was being displayed in front of her. Holy shit, she cursed in her head. She had believed she had seen it all when it came to training these three. They always found some way to surprise her. The progress they made was outright terrifying, and it was genuine dread. If they kept this up, they'd surpass her by the time they got to Itachi's age easily. And when they were in their late teens and early 20s, Mikoto chose not to finish that thought, fearing it might chill her to death. How? How in the hell are they able to not only surpass my expectations, but outright shatter them? She dwelled in bewilderment. Dozens of theories ran through her mind, but she sighed in defeat. Their potential frightened the living daylights out of her. She then looked at the three as they continued to spar in an every-man-for-himself fashion. Naruto had managed to knock both his friends back at the same time, obviously showing the most skill in taijutsu. I see, Mikoto noted. She had planned on waiting, but she now knew it was time to teach them that jutsu. All right, you three, Mikoto said, walking up to them. That's enough for now. Like soldiers, they all stood in formation ready to receive any and all instructions from the Uchiha matriarch. You all did very well, I'm proud of you all, Mikoto praised to the smiling trio. Inwardly, she was rolling her eyes at her proclamation. Very well. PFT, try-fucking spectacular. But, she couldn't let them know that, or risk letting them get arrogant. She'd rather avoid having to deal with the lesson of humility altogether, than giving them high praise and let it become an issue. They had just enough confidence to believe in their skills and their friends, but enough humility to know their limits. In fact, you three have done so well, I've decided to teach you a jutsu, she revealed. Sasuke smirked, Sakura smiled, and Naruto was practically drooling on himself at the prospect. The kid was a sucker for new techniques, regardless of the type. Ka-san, what jutsu is it? Her onyx-eyed son asked. He had a feeling that this was the jutsu she was referring to about 3 months ago. Maybe it'll be better if I show you, Mikoto told him, motioning the three to follow her towards the lake. She did 5 hand seals in rapid succession and called out, Katan, Gakakyu no Jutsu. Fire release, great fireball technique. She arched her back and blew out a steady stream of flames that covered the diameter of the entire circular-shaped lake. The lake was starting to boil from her jutsu, so she cut off the chakra feeding into it, canceling the technique altogether. She turned back towards them and immediately wished she had a camera. Their faces were utterly priceless, and she couldn't help but laugh a bit heartily. Jaws were on the floor, eyes were wide, and mouths were drooling. Mikoto-sensei, your Sakura began bewildered, going to teach us that? That was so totally cool. Naruto added, fist-bumping his best friend, who grinned back at him. Then maybe she can teach us all sorts of things like that. Mikoto pushed her hands back in a slow-down motion. All right, you three, don't get ahead of yourselves, she warned while laughing. First of all, I need to learn your natures. Our natures, the trio responded in chorus-like confusion. Mikoto bobbed her head. Yes, your natures, or chakra natures, rather. It's going to determine which element you can learn the easiest, as well as it being naturally more powerful than someone who used the same jutsu, but not the same element. For example, I'm fire-natured and my husband is earth-natured. If we were to perform the Gakakyu, mine would be naturally stronger than his, because that is not his natural affinity. Keep in mind, this is in general. Skill level also plays a heavy role in this as well. They nodded in understanding. How are you going to determine our natures? Came Naruto's query. Mikoto simply pulled out 3 slips of paper and handed one to each of them. Pulsate a small amount of chakra through these. If it burns, you're fire-natured, if it crumples, lightning, gets wet, water, turns to dust, earth, and if it splits in half, wind. All 3 concentrated and sent a surge of chakra through the parchments. The result stunned the Uchiha matriarch. Sasuke's head crumpled, indicating he was lightning-natured. Sakura's had turned wet, indicated a water affinity. Finally, Naruto's had split cleanly in half. Wow, that's interesting and a bit problematic, Mikoto said, groaning a bit. They looked at her strangely as if wanting her to explain herself. Well, I don't know any lightning or wind techniques, so I can't teach you guys much in those areas, Naruto-kun, Sasuke-kun, she replied a bit solemnly. They both grimaced, but nodded, nonetheless, despite their bad luck. And Sakura, I do know some water techniques, but this jutsu will be the most difficult for you to master considering it's your polar opposite. In fact, all three of you will find this technique difficult to learn considering it's not your natural affinity. I figured as much, the young female admitted with a long sigh. It doesn't matter. Naruto spoke up, all eyes turning on him. We've made it this far, and I'm not going to let some piece of paper discourage me. We've all had hardships, ones that we still aren't comfortable in sharing, yet, with each other. He noticed their slight downcast looks, agreeing with that last statement. But, look at it this way. The harder the challenge is, the better it'll be when we finally learn it, right? Mikoto-sensei, I welcome the challenge. I can't be a legendary ninja if I get discouraged over a jutsu being difficult to learn because it's not my natural element. Sakura-chan, Sasuke, if something like this scares us, then what kind of shinobi would we be? Jade and Onyx's eyes widened as they realized that their blonde friend was correct. Sasuke's ambition of proving that there were those who could rise above the stigma of arrogance that his clan held, and he wanted to be known for his own abilities, not that of being an Uchiha. Sakura's ambition of being a medic ninja would be useless if she was scared of a little challenge. She'd be saving lives day in and day out. There was no time for fear of the unknown. They both looked at him seriously and nodded. Mikoto smirked. Damn good speech, Naruto-kun. It seems you've reawakened the determination in their hearts. Just like your father did so many years ago, she added in thought. The boy was unknowingly becoming more and more like his dad than he realized. All right, team, let's get to work on learning that jutsu. Mikoto exclaimed excitedly, and her three pupils returned her enthusiasm with fists pumped in the air. Naruto allowed a smile to adorn his face as he dried off in the bathroom. In addition to their regular drills to keep their skills sharp, it had taken a good long while for all three of them to learn the Gakakyu no Jutsu. Sasuke had been the first to be able to do the jutsu successfully, within 3.5 weeks' time. As for himself, he had completed the jutsu after a month of hard work, blood, sweat, and lots of tears. As for his pink-haired friend, she had taken the longest to successfully perform the Katan jutsu. It was one part due to her smaller reserves than her male companions, and another in part to her being water-natured. However, like all things in life, with some dedication, she had finally performed the technique in front of her sensei and friends. The three had a long way to go before they'd mastered the jutsu, but how many academy students could say they knew what jutsu meant for those of Chunin rank and above? After brushing his teeth and doing miscellaneous hygienic habits, the Jinchuriki stepped out of the bathroom feeling refreshed. He went to his closet and opened it. Instead of his usual orange monstrosity, there were pants, shorts, and shirts of all kinds of colors. Thank the gods, she took you three shopping. I couldn't bear looking at that thing you called an outfit. Naruto couldn't help but to chuckle in agreement. That shopping experience with his sensei was certainly interesting. You know, Fox, Naruto said, pulling out a pair of black pants, matching sandals and an orange and black shirt, some part of me expected the shop owners to either overcharge me or kick me out of their stores simply because of value, he admitted. The Kyuubi snorted. Of course not. If I know one thing about you humans, is that you always put aside whatever grudges you have in favor of making money. Add to the fact that they don't openly show hate towards you just to try to wear you down psychologically, the odds of that happening are astronomically low. I don't know where you got that facetious idea from. To the Fox, the idea was inconceivable, and borderline on being completely stupid and absurd. Naruto shrugged, putting on his clothes. Hey, when you're in my position, you tend to get paranoid a bit in public. He could hear the fox grunt. Brat, don't think you're special. Not everything is going to revolve around you, despite myself being your prisoner so to speak. Those villagers are ignorant, yes, but I think it's more of the fact that they blame you for being a reminder of what happened more so than you as a person, although, admittedly, you did pull a plethora of pranks in your stupider days. Despite the insult, Naruto couldn't help but grin. Those were the days. So you don't think that they think I am you, right? Naruto asked for clarification. To Naruto's surprise, the fox started laughing. Not one of those hollow, evil laughs, but true laughing as if he had heard a good joke. Ha 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 ha, oh god, you nearly made me lose a tail, kid, the Kyuubi chucked out, despite his chortling. To answer your question, by the gods themselves, hell no. You all may be hairless apes, but I know you, as a species, are smarter than to delude yourself into thinking a Jinchuriki is the reincarnation of the Bijou that hold them. The amount of cognitive dissonance you'd have to apply to your own logic to come to that asinine conclusion is simply comical. To better illustrate, have the villagers ever called you a demon or hell spawn? Naruto began to ponder as he reviewed his life in vivid detail. No, not that I can remember. They just excluded me from social events, maybe glare at me, but most simply just chose to ignore and outright didn't even acknowledge my presence. The fox laughed. Well, there you go, brat. They're stupid, but not that stupid. He then shuddered. You a reincarnation of me in a human body, oh, by the gods you worship, that's both asinine and completely insane logic that I have a hard time wrapping my head around how anyone could believe that. Naruto shook his head. Okay, sorry, I was just throwing the possibility out there. Look at it this way, at least you got your laugh in for the day. Isn't that the truth? The fox scoffed. It got extremely boring at times in this cage. He was glad he had a container whose life wasn't totally boring, or he would have gone completely insane. Well, I appreciate it, Fox. Seriously, the blonde thanked. For a moment, the Kyuubi didn't know how to respond to his container. After a pregnant silence, he waved the blonde off with a paw. Anything to keep your mind sharp and us alive, kid. Don't mention it, the fox replied, causing Naruto to smile. No. Seriously, don't mention it, he added, causing Naruto to palm his face. Hey, don't you facepalm me, he complained, huffing. By the way, didn't you have to meet up at the academy? I know I don't know 2 minutes. Naruto paled a bit and looked at his alarm clock. Sure enough, it read, 8:58. Mirroring his actions 6 months ago when he had to meet Sakura and Sasuke at the library, Naruto shot out of his apartment like a bat out of hell. Except this time, he was much faster than before due to his sensei's brutal training. Konoha Ninja Academy, 0900. Hours, Sakura stood with her back against the wall waiting for her teammates, while also actively pulsating a chakra hankyurai, keeping track of every single person who entered the academy. She wore a brand new cheapao dress with dark blue shorts underneath with blue sandals. Despite the dress, she still looked relatively tomboyish, despite remaining pretty attractive. An echolocation came back to her, its familiarity causing her to open her eyes in excitement. Naruto-kun is here. She thought a bit dreamily. Sure enough, the blonde was coming around the corner in the outfit she had picked out when all 4 of them went shopping last week. That fact alone sent a blush on her cheeks. Oi! Sakura-chan. Naruto called out to his female friend. She gave him a hug which he happily returned. Bet you thought I'd be late to arrive, huh? Naruto asked, letting her go. She smirked a bit. Oh, no, I didn't. I actually knew you were coming, she said matter-of-factly. He raised an eyebrow. Oh, really? How? Naruto asked a bit dumbly. She sighed. Don't tell me you already forgot, she said, holding up an index finger and activating the jutsu again. Naruto smacked his face with an open palm. He really needed to stop doing that. Oh, right. I forgot about the Hankyutai for a second, he admitted. Sakura shook her head. Hope that doesn't happen when we go on missions, she half-joked. He scratched the back of his head sheepishly. I hope he doesn't, either, came the sound of a familiar male voice. The duo turned around to see none other than Sasuke Uchiha and their sensei. Sasuke. Sensei. Naruto beamed as he gave his best friend a fist bump, which was returned. Mikoto smiled at the three, and bent down slightly to their level. Okay, you three remember what I told you, right? She inquired, looking at them a bit critically. All three nodded in confirmation. First rule is to only hold back when we're facing the other students in the other matches. If we face each other, we give it everything we've got, Naruto began. Mikoto nodded. Second, no matter how much we want to, we aren't allowed to use our advanced techniques, Sasuke regurgitated back, with a bit of a frown. And finally, Sakura began, we must stay the entire 4 years, even if we surpass the entire class in spades, which we probably already do. Mikoto nodded to both of them that they were correct. That's right, but you forgot one final rule, Mikoto told them. That earned her confused looks. Show them what you got and blow them away, she smirked, giving them the thumbs up. All three grinned back. Trust us, sensei. They won't know what hit them. If your stories are anything to go by, the academy should be a joke, Naruto declared. Compared to what I've put you guys through over the past 6 months, it'd better damn well be. Like that time we were training in a monsoon and you guys. 3 hands immediately covered her mouth as they glared at her. You promised not to speak of that moment. Sasuke complained with a huff. His mother started chuckling muffled laughs and gently pulled their hands off of her. I did, didn't I? She pulled them all into a hug. I'm proud of you 3. Truly, I am, she whispered in their ears. Naruto was struggling not to have tears roll down his cheek. Was this what it felt like to have a mother's love? Thank you, sensei, they chorused together, holding on to her tight. They stayed like that for a good half a minute, content in each other's arms. Pulling away, Mikoto stood back up. Go get them, guys, she ordered with a smile. A triad of smirks adorned the young children's faces. Naruto, naturally, took the lead. Let's do this, guys, he chimed, ready for anything the academy could throw at them. Saying goodbyes to their sensei, they made their way to their classroom. Classroom 3A0912 hours. Classroom 3A was filled with children conversing amongst themselves, and generally all around the same age, give or take a year or so. Irika was quietly observing all 36 of them. They were quite a large class. Not his biggest, ever, but still up there. It wasn't 9:15 yet, so he gave them some time to talk to each other. In some twist of fate, all of the clans were in representation here, both minor and noble. Kiba Inuzuka, clan heir to the Inuzuka clan, was currently conversing with the heirs of the Akimichi and Nara clans, Chuji and Shikamaru, respectively. Kiba had typical features of the clan with messy brown hair, black vertically slit pupils, along with more pronounced canines and red markings on his cheeks. In contrast to him, Chuji was rather large for his age, in keeping with the Akimichi girth size. He was a brunette and always had a bag of chips in his hand ready for consumption. Shikamaru, on the other hand, in stark contrast, was lazy as ever, sleeping on his desk or at the very least trying to with all the noise in the room. Irika had to shake his head in amusement. The laziness of the Nara clan never ceased to amaze him. Then, there came the ever-stoic Shino Aburame. Like his clan, he probably had a hive inside of him and took to wearing dark shades even indoors. Why they did this, Irika would likely never know. Representing the Yamanaka clan was Ino, who was the only daughter of the current clan head, Inoichi. Bright blonde hair and aqua-colored eyes adorned her features. She was easily one of the prettiest girls in the classroom. His eyes traveled elsewhere to another part of the room, where a young girl with lavender hair and pupil-less white eyes, Hinata Hyuga. So far, the girl wasn't talking to anyone and was pretty darn shy. The dolphin sighed. He'd have to try and get her to come out of her shell or she'd be damn near useless. If she lacked the self-confidence, then it would be quite the task to bring out her full potential. Suddenly, his eyes diverted left and low. And behold, it was the boy he hadn't talked to, personally, in nearly half a year. Standing in the doorway, was Naruto Uzumaki and his two companions, Sakura Haruno and Sasuke Uchiha. So, everything now comes full circle, he thought to himself, smiling. Oi! Naruto! It's good to see you again, Iruka spoke cheerfully to the blonde. He took note of his increase in height. He was probably the tallest in the class, just a notch below Shino. Naruto gave him a small smile and nodded. It's good to see you as well, Iruka-sensei, he spoke calmly and cordially. This surprised the young instructor, for a second or so, but then he remembered that he had been training with the Uchiha matriarch for the past 6 months, so it stood to reason that she might have ironed out his hyperactivity. Why don't you three take a seat up there, he suggested, pointing out a row suited for 3 people near the window that was in the middle of the classroom. They bowed in thanks and made their way up toward the row he had designated. They could feel that nearly all eyes in the classroom were on them. Oh my gosh, who are those 2 boys? Naruto heard a couple of girls say, out of the corner of his eye, he could already see they had hearts in their eyes. He couldn't help but to let out a groan. Sasuke smirked and gave him a look that told all, welcome to my world. Sakura sighed as they sat down with Naruto near the window, her in the middle, and Sasuke near on the outside. Just great, now I have to deal with the stupidity of fangirls vying for their affections, she dwelled with a grumble. The rosette-haired girl also noticed some glares being sent her way. Ugh, and I have to deal with the jealous types, too, as well. It just had to be my luck of being best friends with 2 cute guys. She sulked down in her seat, a bit depressed at the prospect. Add to the fact that she could run circles around pretty much every girl here, which only added to her likely being ostracized and hated by the female population. Sakura-chan, you okay? Naruto asked in worry, seeing her sulk. Truthfully, not really. You know those girls have crushes on you guys, right? Sakura asked semi-rhetorically. We're well aware of that, Sasuke confirmed, with a nod from Naruto. What about it? She sighed. Let's just say that, so far, they haven't taken a liking to me. They were about to ask her what she meant by that, before Iruka stood up silencing the class. All right, everyone, settle down, now. Surprisingly, they obeyed. Good. I'd like to welcome you all to the Konoha Ninja Academy. You'll be learning all sorts of things from the history of our village, mathematics, how to be an effective shinobi. The 3 decided to tune out Iruka's speech and decided to whisper quietly amongst themselves. Mikoto had already given them the rundown of what was going to be taught, they didn't need to hear it for a second time. Man, is this going to be a long 4 years, Naruto groaned. His 2 friends sighed in agreement. Wished something exciting would happen to spice things up. Be careful what you wished for, because you just might get it. Kumogakure, 3rd District, Obano's residence, mid-November, 2100 hours, it was a chilly night in the late autumn month of November. The fall was considerably more frigid in Kumo than it was nearly anywhere else, besides Yuki no Kuni, land of snow, on the continent due to it being situated high in the mountains where the air was much chillier. Obano sat off on a railing as he watched Omoi and Karui spar, with the use of actual bladed weapons in his backyard, which had a small training area. He had an actual house, not an apartment or condo like most did. Once Hideyoshi had learned he had taken the 3 orphans in, he offered to pay for the mortgage on a new home, where he could teach them ninjutsu as well as provide each of them their own rooms. To say the 3 were eternally grateful to the ultranationalist leader would be a vast understatement. Can't believe I'm actually a sensei, now, the Emerald Fang thought in slight amusement. 5 months ago, he had met them out of a sheer act of fate. That night, when he had fed them a full-course meal, Omoy had done the unexpected and dropped to his knees and practically begged the Jounin to teach them how to be a ninja. Of course, he was already planning on teaching them and indoctrinating them, but it still shocked the raven-haired ninja to his core. Even more surprising, both Karui and Samui had actually agreed with him. Honestly, he thought Samui would be the most resistant one, but lo. And behold, she wanted to learn how to be a shinobi, too. He had asked for their reasoning and the answers he had received were remarkably straightforward. It boiled down to 3 things. First off, they wanted to have a purpose in life other than just being street rats. Second, they wanted the power to protect each other and those they cared about from harm. Lastly, learning and serving under him would be their honor, as a form of repayment for taking them in when no one else would. Combined with all those factors and reasons, it wasn't too hard for Obano to accept them all as his pupils and effectively indoctrinate them in the principles and philosophies of the ultranationalists. To his surprise, he found out that the 3 held no love for Killer A any more than he did. As far as they were concerned, the Hokage had the power to help those in situations similar to theirs, and yet, foolishly chose to do nothing. Obano had enough cash to live off of for at least 5 to 7 years almost, since he rarely bought anything other than the bare essentials and paid his utilities on time. As such, he could afford to take 6 months of leave, so he could focus exclusively on training Team Omoy. The team name was naturally decided since he was the one who took charge and fit a leadership role perfectly. He turned his head slightly, hearing his back screen door open and Samui coming out of it. She had a small blanket around her shoulders as well as a cup of hot tea in her hands. She took a seat near her sensei and watched Omoy and Karui lock blades, each one battling for supremacy. "They're pretty good, aren't they, Obano-sensei?" she noted softly, taking a sip, watching them. Personally, she wasn't really all that into bladed weapons besides kunai and shuriken. "Heh, yeah, they are, aren't they, Samui? I taught them well," he grinned a bit, watching Karui dodge Omoy's strike that hit the ground with so much force a cloud of dust kicked up. "Okay, maybe a little too well," he chuckled. Samui couldn't help but giggle at her sensei. "Oh, come on, you know you're proud of us," she teased. The ultranationalist Jounin held his hands up in defeat. "Okay, you caught me. How devious of you," he played along, transforming her giggles into full-blown laughter. Obano chortled with his student, each enjoying each other's company. Hisensei was wondering, she began as she stared up at the night sky, "Are you going to send us to the academy?" Obano snorted. "And let you be influenced by those lies the Hokage manages to spew into the history books? Absolutely not." She looked at him in surprise. "Then, how are we going to become genin?" He looked at her neutrally. "Well, once the coup happens, you guys can get a field promotion right then." He then sighed. "Look, you let me worry about that, okay? You 3 just need to concentrate on getting stronger, all right?" Samui slowly nodded, accepting her sensei's judgment for now. Technically, they were supposed to be in the academy already, but growing up on the streets had prevented that from happening. Considering the size of the village, there were actually 4 academies scattered throughout. There had been requests for A to build a 5th one in the 11th district, but he denied them all, on the basis of they would have to make do with what they had due to budget concerns. She clenched her fists. It added to the already numerous reasons she despised the leader of the village. "Samui," she heard Obano call out to her. "Yes, sensei," she answered. "Tell me something," he said as he looked toward the stars. "Why were you so resilient when we first met? You were the hard ass, so to speak." They both shared a small laugh at that. "Not only that, but you seemed so cynical and now you're almost the exact opposite, at least to me you are." Samui pondered on it before letting out a breath, resolving into a weary look on her face. "Well, I never really trusted adults, sensei. They were always liars, manipulators, and always wanted to use us for their own gain. One of the reasons I was so hesitant to go with you, Omoi and Karui, was because I actually believed you to be honest. It honestly scared me. More so than you ever know. The more I listened to you, the more I wanted to find out if you were actually being genuine. That scared me, so much that I fought my innermost desire and tried to mask it with skepticism and disbelief. Growing up on the streets of the 11th district, you kind of learn who to and not to trust. One day, your life could be totally normal, and then in the next, you're running for your life, trying to get away with stealing food. When you saved us from that butcher, I felt relieved, and my natural instinct after bearing these hardships for so long was to come to you. Obano frowned, genuinely saddened by his pupil's desolation. Are you saying that even before Omoi? Yes, Samui interjected. I trusted you before the thought of coming back home with you even crossed his mind. My heart told me to follow my instinct, but my head told me to relent, which kept me stubborn. I finally gave in. She then smiled. I'm glad I did. Sensei, the best thing to ever happen to Uzumaki as well, she admitted with small look of adoration in her eyes. Obano couldn't help but grin back at her. He gave the blonde girl a thumbs up. Samui, you guys aren't too bad yourself, he admitted. He'd be damned if he admitted outright that he had taken a liking to the three orphans or risk feeling of going soft. Samui saw through this easily, but decided to play along for the sake of amusement. Oi! Omoi! Karui! Come on inside. It's getting cold, Obano told them, hopping off the railing and walking up to the two novice swordsmen/woman. Karui frowned. Ah, come on, sensei. We were just getting warmed up, she complained, meaning it both literally and figuratively. Yeah, Obano-sensei. Can't we go at it some more? Omoi begged. Obano couldn't help but shake his head. They were certainly eager. Nah, you two have been training for the past 2 hours straight. It's time to call it a night. Although obviously disappointed, they reluctantly bowed and sheathed their swords on their backs. Great job, you two. You seem to take up kenjutsu as if you were born to wield them, he praised them, impressed. Both Karui and Omoi bowed to their master, as a show of gratitude. Come on, and let's get inside. I already have dinner being fixed, he told them. As if on cue, their stomachs growled. Samui looked at him. Don't you mean I have dinner fixed already? She'd be damned if she let him take credit for a meal she prepared. I did give you the money to get the ingredients, didn't I? Obano joked, trying to plead his case. Samui clucked her teeth. Yeah, okay, she rolled her eyes. The Jounin simply gave her a grin. Omoi shook his head and Karui sighed. The antics of their master and Samui never ceased to amaze them. Both junior swordsmen jumped up to the balcony. All four made their way into the house, where they found an unexpected guest sitting at the table calmly looking at them both. Team Omoi's eyes immediately widened collectively, recognizing the person. They were already on their knees bowing. Hideyoshi-sama, they called out in both shock and respect that their leader was here. Judging from Obano's expression, it was clear he didn't expect the boss, either. He bowed as well, although not getting on his knees. Hideyoshi-sama, this is an unexpected visit, the Jounin admitted. I see that you've taught them well, Obano, he praised, ignoring his statement for the moment. That immediately pleased the trio of orphans. Thank you, Hideyoshi-sama, Obano thanked his master at the compliment. The ultranationalist leader waved him off. I bring good news, Obano, Hideyoshi began before telling them all to rise. Team Omoi obeyed him without the slightest bit of hesitation. Obano couldn't tell whether his master had a smirk or smile on his face, but chose to ignore it. We won, he finally revealed. All four pairs of the eyes of his subordinates went wide. The lollipop in Omoi's mouth fell to the floor. He smirked as he pointed toward the cooking pots and pans on the stove near him. "Why don't we discuss it over dinner?" he suggested. Samui turned red as she flushed. "Oh, of course," at once Hideyoshi-sama, she stuttered out as she went over to the stove. She prayed to the gods that her cooking was up to his standards. Obano, Karui, and Omoi, however, decided to take their seats. Obano sat directly across from Hideyoshi, and Karui and Omoi were on either side of him. As much as they respected their leader, even they were weary being so close to him. "We won," Obano repeated back, a bit in disbelief. "We actually won." He couldn't help but to sound cheerful as if he had won the lottery. Hideyoshi narrowed his eyes a bit in annoyance as he winced. "Mind the volume of your voice, Obano," the Akechi clan head warned. The jade-eyed Jounin held his head in shame, but was dismissed by his master, forgiving him. "Anyhow, yes, although we managed to pick up 2 seats," he revealed. Although slightly disappointed they didn't win all of them, it was still better than nothing. Now they had 5 seats on the council. Samui sat plates full of rice and chicken she had prepared in front of the 4 of them, as well as a small plate for herself. "Hideyoshi-sama, what districts did we win?" the sapphire-eyed blonde asked, taking a small bite of her rice. The rest of her team and her sensei were interested as well, but they decided stuffing their stomachs was a bigger priority at the moment. "Districts 8. They raised an eyebrow. It wasn't exactly in dire need of change, but hey. A win was a win. "And the second one?" Obano deeply intoned. "The 11th, Hideyoshi revealed, dropping the bombshell. Team Omoi dropped their wooden utensils against their plates in complete and utter disbelief. "The 11th? Kaori repeated, wondering if her ears deceived her. Hideyoshi nodded. "That's right, Karui. The 11th district, your home. The United Cloud no longer controls it." "We do," he confirmed. Omoi managed a huge grin as he popped himself out of his chair. "Ah, hell yeah," he cried out, high-fiving Karui, who happily returned it. Samui couldn't hold it in as she started crying tears of joy. Obano was about to reprimand them, but he was stopped by a look from Hideyoshi, indicating it was fine, and to let them enjoy their moment. The Akechi clan head offered a small half-smirk, half-smile at his 3 youngest subordinates. "I'm glad you 3 are happy, as well," he told them, his genuine delight in their happiness surprised even him. He shuddered a bit, trying not to dwell on what these 3 children might do to him. "You know what that means, guys? Real change is coming." Samui beamed. "No longer will most children like us be forced to steal, while the guys in charge do nothing about it." Their sensei smiled. "You best believe it, Samui. The ultranationalists have the best interests of everyone at heart." Hideyoshi almost felt guilty at the half-truth that his Jounin subordinate had uttered. "Almost. That's why we're going to spread our wings to the rest of the continent, right, Hideyoshi-sama?" Omoi queried as he envisioned it. He was looking over in the living room where the ultranationalist flag was. It was a primarily black banner with golden stripes on the outer tips. In the center, there was the entire Earth. Over the Earth was a golden eagle emblem with its wings spread out to its entire wingspan over the Earth. Below its feet was a triangle with an intricate design in the center of it. The 3 sides of the triangular shape represented the core of being an ultranationalist: duty, obedience, and loyalty. It was the duty of an ultranationalist to carry out their orders to the best of their abilities without question. An ultranationalist was to always be obedient to his superiors, unless that superior's orders contradicted the orders of their superiors. Above all else, an ultranationalist was to be loyal to his leader and follow him to the gates of hell, if need be. These were the undying principles that his master had engraved in their minds from day one. Omoi made a vow that he would never break any of those edicts, so long as breath remained in his body. Hideyoshi couldn't help but smirk. Obano had truly struck gold when he had found these 3 diamonds in the rough. Not only were they the perfect subordinates, and didn't resist indoctrination, they had actual hidden talents as shinobi, too. The Akechi clan head bobbed his head. Yes, indeed, Omoi, we shall, but I need to speak with your sensei alone. Could you leave us? He commanded. Of course, they chorused, leaving their mentor and leader to their own devices. There was a small silence between them as they waited until his pupils were out of earshot. Before you begin, Hideyoshi-sama, Obano began, I seriously hope the councilman who replaced the United Cloud will do a better job. It would be a shame we get this far and they see empirical evidence to the contrary of what I've taught them. Do you take me for a fool, Obano? He retorted rhetorically. I know damn well what can happen if we don't start improving things within the districts we win. We only have one shot at this. I intend to not mess it up. Already, the councilman is making arrangements to build an academy in the 11th district. Obano raised an eyebrow. Won't you need A's written consent for that? Outside of formal and forced meetings, Obano refused to call him Reikage-sama. Hideyoshi smirked, laying his chin on his left fist. Who said it was going to be publicly funded? The Jounin's jaw dropped. You mean a private academy? Are you serious right now? Hideyoshi's gray eyes stared at the jade-eyed Jounin as they seemed to pour into the very depths of his psyche. A small, thin line pursed his lips to an almost psychotic degree, which chilled Team Omoi's sensei to his very bones. Yes, deadly serious Obano. Technically, there was no law against funding for private citizens to fund out of their own pocket to teach the young how to be shinobi. Frankly, no one took advantage of this edict, since they didn't want to waste their money on teaching children the fundamentals of our village. What's to stop the Reikage from shutting you down? Obano inquired. Ah, there lies the beauty of it. How can he shut us down without making himself look worse than the fool already does? This is private property, and technically, we are making an investment, so it wouldn't be wise for him to incite the wrath of the businessmen who support him. Aren't most businessmen with the Virga, in terms of raw support? Obano noted, a bit confused. He was knowledgeable in the area of the politics of Kyumo, but there were some areas where even he was ignorant. Most are, Hideyoshi confirmed, but some of the Virga's deregulating practices are starting to hurt other areas of commerce around the village. Considering some business regulations apply in certain districts at certain times of the year and other miscellaneous factors, you can see where the confusion can come from with their idiotic policies. Obano nodded his head that he understood. Funding? That's the beauty of it. Due to it being a privately started entity used for the basis of public need, it's subsidized by tax breaks, along with any spare tax dollars going to maintain it. This was a decree by A. himself, so even he can't overturn it without looking like he's doing it out of spite for us winning fairly. If he does, we'll simply use that against him in the next campaign, further decreasing his power and influence within the village. A wicked grin contorted on the ultranationalist's face. Also, since we're not subject to the curriculum regulations of the village, Obano's eyes widened. That means we can effectively write in our ideology within the context of what they're learning. The implications of that fact were simply incalculable. Hideyoshi smirked. Brilliant, isn't it? Imagine an entire generation's worth of orphans and children raised on the streets, being finally given the opportunity they've so desperately wanted to lift themselves up from the shackles of poverty and serve a purpose in life. You could effectively indoctrinate entire peer groups of children, Obano observed a bit in awe. Precisely, the Akechi head confirmed, eyes narrowing conspiratorially. Not only that, but all of their peers will be just like them. Know what they've gone through, they've trained together, survived together, and banded together for something to fight for. Put all that together with our creeds, and you get a generation of loyal soldiers, Obano finished. Indeed. And we plan to repeat this process in the neighboring districts, so we can try and bring them all to our side. Obano had to admit that it was one of those plans that chilled even him. Programming a group of children? Was that truly ethical? Sure, he did it to Karui, Samui, and Omoibutuf. His conscience was eating at him again. Damn it! However, there was one thing he had been wondering about. What does he think about it? Obano asked cryptically, although the ultranationalist knew exactly who he was referring to. Hideyoshi's eyes shrunk to slits. Don't concern yourself with him. That will come in due time, he reassured his loyal subordinate. The Emerald Fang sighed. I still don't see the point in, now. Hideyoshi's narrowed eyes turned into a full-blown deathly glare. In due time. You aren't to mention that around those three until it's time to take the village. Am I clear? Crystal, sir, he replied, inwardly sighing. He was one of the very few in the organization who knew that tidbit of information, and Hideyoshi wanted it to stay that way. Hideyoshi stood up. In any case, I must be taking my leave, I still have clan duties to attend to. I also want you to be there for when we make a test for WROC-S. Obano's eyes widened again. You mean you've developed a device that can slow down our descent when we jump? Yes, Hideyoshi interjected. It seems our summoning contracts are about to be used a lot more broadly, it seems. But, if the program is successful, a wicked smirk crossed his face, invading the other hidden villages will be ridiculously easy. Where will the test be? I'm making arrangements for it to be in Yuki no Kuni, away from the eyes of A, he said simply. Obano grimaced. I'm not really a fan of cold weather, but fine. I'll bring my pupils with me, too. Hideyoshi bobbed his head. See to it that you do. I'm off. Good night to you, Obano. Remember what I said, not a word to them until the time is right. With that final warning, Hideyoshi vanished. In a flock of white feathers. Obano simply sighed in defeat as he covered his hands over his face. Hideyoshi-sama. You can't hide from him forever, tread carefully. He stood up from the table and turned out the kitchen light. Making his way toward the back rooms, he saw that the three were already asleep in their own rooms, each decorated to their own personalities. Guess all that training must have worn them out, along with the revelation that their home is being fixed, he deduced from the look of content that adorned their facial expressions. The Emerald Fang couldn't help but smile as he turned out their lights and made his way to the master bedroom. Their home was being fixed. Consequences be damned, it was. Killer A wasn't going to do a damn thing about it, so it was time they did. Even if they brainwashed the kids into following them, they were being told the truth, right? Obano sighed as he stripped off his clothes and plopped onto his bed. He truly didn't know whether what they were doing was right or wrong, but the amount of contentment he felt when he trained Team Omoi made him learn that he was doing the right thing. So, why did he have trouble sleeping that night? A bar, 4th District, 2,300 hours, hot damn, Sadesho, I don't how you did it, but your plan to save this district worked perfectly, see, an associate of Darui remarked, taking a sip of sake. He was a jounin alongside Darui, who assisted the rakeage, and was once a member of the Virga, but converted to the United Cloud. Dirty blonde hair, dark eyes, and a small frame in a standard Kumo jounin outfit adorned his features. Darui, Isu, and C had decided to go out to the bar for a drink to celebrate. Once again, they had left clones in the care of Ayasaki. The 13-year-old had insisted on coming with them, as she wanted to celebrate, too, but not only was the girl a long way from being able to drink, being around people might make her sickness even worse. The girl pouted, but nonetheless understood. The Bolt commander frowned a bit. Well, yeah, I did sort of, but they did manage to win 2 seats. Not the sort of victory I was looking for, he conceded. Darui shook his head. No, you saved our asses. From the way things were looking, it was quite possible, if not, probable that they would have gained all 4 seats, putting them at a majority. You bought us some time to swing things back our way. Isu simply sighed in acceptance of what he felt was a hollow victory. It had been a stroke of pure luck that he had some dirt on the guy representing the ultranationalists that was running. Being the commander of the village's elite Black Ops division came with an enormous amount of perks, including dossiers on virtually every single shinobi, past and present. For all his talk about bringing the village back to power, the ultranationalist in turn had led his team to ambush during the last war, and they were utterly slaughtered on account of his poor leadership. It was buried and covered up, but Aisu had brought it to the light, anonymously, and subsequently caused him to lose public confidence, and thus he lost at the ballot by a landslide. When Darui had learned of his plan, he was floored. He had honestly expected some grand, almost convoluted scheme from the Bolt leader. Instead, what he got was so simple, yet 10 times as effective. Who knew the Sadesho had it in him to be so utterly devious and conniving? Darui dwelled, amused. I know that, but even still. We managed to save 2 districts. Count M2, he grimly replied, holding a 2 fingers for emphasis. The electorate is entirely different from the general population, you know? Aisu was getting a headache from all of this political gibberish. He needed some fucking hot cocoa now. C frowned. What do you mean? Aisu sighed. What I mean is, despite all the heavy campaigning, voter turnout was what? 56%? Despite the landslide victory, we still have a segment of the population that is fully entrenched in the views of the ultranationalists. They simply choose to sit on their asses rather than go out and vote. Isn't that a good thing? I mean, if they did come out and vote, we would have lost, right? Shouldn't we be encouraging them to stay home, so to speak? C suggested, genuinely confused at the logic of Aisu's words. No, the Sadesho's right, Darui grimly replied, his habitually lazy eyes taking a tone of gloom. If there was one thing my sensei always taught me is that, while the support of the electorate is always important, not having the backing of the general population is far, far worse. The heir to the Black Lightning then grimaced. I can see why you weren't as happy as we were a few minutes ago. His gloom remark almost caused him to spiral down into a deep depression. C, however, still wasn't one to give up. Come on, guys, I know it may seem bad right now, but we got to look at the future. I'm sure we can make a comeback. Aisu and Darui both looked back at him dully, as if what he said just went in one ear and out the other. Aisu stood up and turned away from them, a look in his eyes showing almost complete detachment from the world around him. If the Raikage doesn't get his act together, he will have thrown away everything that made this country so great. By the fucking gods, I don't want the ultranationalists to take over, but why isn't he doing anything else? He practically yelled. That sudden outburst made the 2 Jounin flinch a bit. They had never seen the commander lose control over his emotions like that. Then again, considering all the clandestine bits of intelligence he received every day, the anxiety of being leader of such a large division, and helping to keep the people he hated the most out of power, it was to expected he had to snap at some point. Truly, the man had to be of sound mind, considering he hadn't let his mind go to complete insanity. The wielder of the Thunderbirds breathed in and out in short, controlled bursts, to bring himself back under control. He looked back at them both apologetically. Look, I'm going to go. I'm going to stop by your house and check up on Ayasaki, all right? Darui nodded in confirmation. Thanks for looking after my sister, Sadesho. Aisu smiled. It's no big deal. Here, he said, pulling out a few notes of Ryu. Drinks are on me. C blinked in surprise. But Sadesho, this bill the amount of money we SPE, it's fine, Aisu interjected. Consider it a gift for helping me cope with the stress. Darui, on the other hand, hushed C before he could retort in protest yet again. Thank you, Sadesho. Tell my sister I'll be home in an hour, would ya? I will, he confirmed. I'll see you both when I can. With nothing more needed to be said, Aisu phased out of sight. C whistled in awe. Damn, how I wish I could do a Shunshin no Jutsu that fast. Darui chuckled, shaking his head, and downed a swig of sake. Darui's residence, 4th District, 2338 hours, Aisu had blurred into existence, inside Darui's living room. His clone had looked toward him with a serene look on his face. He took note of the absence of Darui's clone. Weird, where's Darui? He asked his doppelganger. His clone shrugged. He said he was going to get some supplies and medicine for her. She looked pretty ill, he gravely intoned. Aisu responded a bit meekly. He dismissed his replica as it turned into a burst of short static electricity which his Reiansu absorbed. The legendary ebony-colored blade pulsated a bit, its short craving satisfied. The Bolt Commander pushed the door to Ayasaki's room ajar and peeked inside. The terminally ill girl was asleep, yes, but she was tossing and turning in her sleep as sweat rolled down her brow. The poor girl's breathing was rapidly increasing, alarming the Hayasaka. Without even thinking twice, his Haori was thrown off, as well as Reiansu. He grabbed the girl and brought her close, trying to get her breathing under control. Fight it, Ayasaki-chan, Aisu said, sending a pulse of his chakra to calm down her nerves, which were going haywire at the moment. His heart was pounding against his chest so hard, he swore it would burst out at any moment. For what seemed like an eternity, the young teen's body began to slow down with her convulsions. She slowly started to open her eyes as her brown orbs stared into cerulean. Aisu-kun? She stared at him in disbelief as saline liquid started to roll down her cheek. Aisu smiled down at her, holding her close. She could always tell him from his replicas, easily. Otherwise she wouldn't add the kun suffix. Yeah, it's me. I'm here for you, he soothed. I had one again, didn't I? She whispered, her voice cracking. He solemnly nodded. It was belief I hadn't surged some of my chakra, you might have. He couldn't bring himself to say it. Then, without warning, the last thing he had expected happened, she kissed him in the lips. The Black Ops commander's eyes widened in complete shock before pulling away from her nearly a second or so after her lips locked with his. He looked at her disapprovingly. Ayasaki, she gave a downcast look. He had dropped his usual honorific. I'm sorry, she uttered regretfully. Why did you do that? Aisu wondered, his tone neutral, but there were hints of disappointment which made the girl's heart sting even worse. I always just thought the only way to repay you was ugh, she spat as the impending rejection was already hard enough. Aisu nodded in understanding. Ayasaki-chan, he started, which lifted the teen's spirits a bit. I know you may like me, Aisu-kun, I love you, she interjected with a cry. He hushed her by putting his finger on her lips. No you don't, he retorted softly. You're infatuated with me. I know it may be hard, but I'm more than twice your age. That's unacceptable, in any fashion. I love you, as well, but not in the way you want it to be. Your world doesn't have to revolve around me or your brother. Have you looked at me, Aisu-kun? She yelled out, surprise immediately on his face at her outburst. I'm sick. I don't know when I'm going to die, I just know that it's coming. You were the guy that I wanted everyone to be like. You were, and still are, my hero and my knight in shining armor. Even before I got sick, I always kept comparing every guy to you and they always fell short. Tears rolled down her dark cheeks as Aisu just sat there, completely speechless. Do you know why I fear death so much, Aisu-kun? No. It's not even the act of dying, no. It's not that I won't be able to serve as a proud kunoichi of the hidden cloud, even. Do you know what it is? Hell, even as much as I love my brother, it's not even him at the true core of why I fear passing on. It's you, she revealed. Separating from you is a fate worse than death. If there were a kami, I'd consider that personal hell a far more tortuous experience than the Shinigami, itself, could ever muster up. Aisu honestly didn't know what to say. Being a man of his intelligence, he always knew that she had a crush on him, but simply ignored it, thinking it was just an early teenage fluff. But to bear all with strong conviction, to tell him how much she idolized him, it was surreal. He then looked at her seriously. "I will, Ayasaki-chan, I will. I'll fight for you. I'll find a way to make you better, I promise," he vowed as she wrapped her arms around him. "I know you always do, don't you?" she whispered in his ear. He couldn't help but smile in her absolute confidence in his abilities. "Now, get some sleep. Your brother should be back in a couple of minutes or so. I'll try and visit you when I can, all right?" Ayasaki nodded as he carefully laid the girl back on her mattress. She took a deep breath and pulled the covers over her. He touched her forehead, and sent a pulse of lightning chakra through her nervous system. In seconds, she was calm enough to fall asleep almost instantly. Hearing Darui come through the front door, Aisu took his opportunity to grab his Haori and Reiansu, and phased out of sight not a second later. He had a certain silver-haired clan head he had to meet. And it was not going to be pretty. Konoha Ninja Academy, early January, 1230 hours, despite being in the middle of winter, today, it was warm enough outside that the students of the Shinobi Academy could actually go outdoors for their half-hour lunch period. Though most still had to wear warm clothing, such as sweaters, jackets, and the like, it still was much better than eating in the cafeteria. When asked why by their instructors of why they hated the inside so much, they commented it was boring. The double meaning behind their words would forever be lost to the adults. The raven-haired Uchiha sat on a high branch in one of the few trees on the academy's grounds, along with his two best friends. Besides the warm clothing they wore to match the color and shades of their lower torsos, they still looked relatively the same. This was a usual spot for the triad of future shinobi. Seeing as how they were, naturally, the top-ranked students in the class, this unspoken rule was universally obliged by the entire class, even their fangirls. Sakura took a sip from her water bottle as they observed the students, playing, talking, and having general fellowship with each other. Naruto's cerulean orbs were scanning the entire outdoor area, watching them all like a hawk stalking its prey from thousands of meters in the air. Sakura hummed, as she observed Chuji, Shikamaru, and Kiba. "Any one of you two ever get the feeling that something's a bit off?" Sasuke raised a brow, while the only thing on the blonde's face that indicated he had even heard his rosette-haired friend was a slight shift in his eyes. "You're specifically talking about Shikamaru, right?" he calmly noted. Sakura simply nodded. Sasuke narrowed his eyes a bit. "Yes, I see. Based on," he paused, before making a ram seal, and shot out an echolocation from the Hankyurii, specifically to Shikamaru, "he doesn't have much chakra, even by academy standards." Naruto made a ram seal himself, and double-checked Sasuke's proclamation. It wasn't that he seriously doubted his best friend would be erroneous in his brief analysis of the Nara air, rather, it was something that was routine among them that they had decided long ago. Whenever one of them used the Hankyurii for any reason, another would always double-check and reaffirm. This ensured that their accuracy of whatever echoed back to them wasn't something out of the ordinary or mistaken for an enemy, object, etc. The system was by no means perfect, but it did end up saving their asses a lot when Mikoto trained them in the snow. A few moments passed and Naruto looked toward his female companion and bobbed his head. "Sasuke's right, he doesn't have a lot of chakra." "All right," Sakura acknowledged the bewhiskered Jinchuriki. "No offense, Sakura, but what's got you so fixated on him? You got a crush on the Nara?" Sasuke teased. That earned a small glare from the Kunoichi in training as she smacked him in the back of his head. "Ow," the Uchiha Scion complained, rubbing the spot where she hit him. Although a bit peeved at the idea of Sakura having crush on the Nara, Naruto couldn't help but laugh out loud. "You idiot. This is no time for jokes," she chastised, pointing her index finger at him. Sasuke groaned a bit. He hated when she did that. It reminded him of his mother when she used to discipline him. Damn, was that scary. "All right, fine, fine," he conceded, before his face turned humorless. Yeah, I know what you mean. This guy ranks near the middle of the class, but he could do so much better. Naruto nodded. Indeed. Considering what this guy can do playing Shugi, this guy's a goddamn genius. As much as I hate to say it, but I think Shikamaru is even smarter than you, Sakura-chan, he said a bit grimly. To his surprise, she didn't even take offense to that last statement. I know, she said evenly. Both boys had to do a double take. Sakura was actually admitting intellectual inferiority. While she wasn't necessarily arrogant because of her sharp astuteness, that didn't mean she didn't have brief moments of where she liked to explain something in finer detail as a boost of her own ego. Since it happened rarely, and the guys could tell when it was simply ego-boosting, they put up with it. To hear her so openly admit that someone was smarter than she was a monumental achievement in her growth. Sakura scoffed a bit, amusedly. I take from the looks on your faces that you're astounded by me admitting that, right? They both nodded dumbly, causing her to chuckle. A serene smile adorned her face. I know he's smart. Hell, if you want my personal take, I think he's a genius, too. I just want to know why he hides it. It just doesn't make sense to me. Naruto pondered on it for a bit. Well, who knows? It could be anything really. But that doesn't mean we should underestimate him. He may decide to have a change of heart and come to rival us. Sakura looked at him. What? It's not like I'm lying. That's true, Naruto, but we still have another 3 years and anything can happen. As some adults say, it's not over until the fat lady sings, Sasuke quoted, causing Naruto to sigh. He took a quick bite of a ham sandwich. I see your point, Sasuke. That being said, I don't plan on that happening. Ever. He then knitted both his eyebrows and looked at them a bit smugly. Do you too? The blonde was given a couple of smirks. Hell no, they chorused together, and all 3 children shared a good laugh. Unbeknownst to the trio, a pair of mystical eyes silently watched them. And it was not human. The scarlet irises of the beast poured through the depths of their souls as it observed them from a location about 100 meters away from them. However, it was mainly focused on the raven-haired Uchiha. Sasuke looked up and saw its silhouette, which was conveniently blocked by the sharp rays of the sun with the exception of its ruby eyes. It seemed captivated by the Uchiha, and it. What is this feeling? Sasuke thought as he felt. Stripped naked and dressed down by the eyes? What the hell? Why did feel extreme warmth the minute he looked into its eyes, all of a sudden? The Uchiha genius felt a bit of sweat roll down his brow as this feeling off judgment crept up his spine, and he felt his muscles involuntarily go limp. The mystical creature's power seemed to have total control over him, as his eyes widened to their fullest extent and his breaths became irregular. In a strange sense of watching himself in a mirror, the further Sasuke's eyes widened, the further the creature's did as well, his width in synchronous harmony with his. Then, it was over as rapidly as it had begun. Sasuke's motor functions came back under his control, a fact that he didn't even realize was taken from him. The frigid temperatures of the winter crept back on his skin as well, the sensation of heat completely gone. He noted the being seemed tone-odd. It closed its eyes and its shape seemingly vanished from Sasuke's view. Eyes narrowed, the Uchiha jumped off the branch, heading toward the direction of the shadowy silhouette. By the time he got there, it was already too late. The creature had long since vanished, seemingly into thin air. Damn! Sasuke cursed as he landed on the ground. His dearest companions landed beside him, looks of worry tracing their features. Yo, Sasuke, what's wrong with you? Why did you head off like that? Naruto asked curiously. It was a bit odd, and out of character, for him to just leave them without telling them a thing. I don't know, but I saw something, the scion tried to explain. He just didn't see it, he felt the damn thing. Sakura frowned. What was it? I didn't know, but you guys, something drew me to it, he admitted. Drew you to it? You mean, like an insect to a nightlight? Naruto inquired. His best friend sighed and slowly bobbed his head. Whatever it weighs, it's gone now. Come on, we got to get back to the academy. You all know how Iruka-sensei is when it comes to being late, Sakura reminded them. They both shared a chuckle. All right, let's go. Naruto chimed before leaping off, Sakura not too far behind. Sasuke stared back at the rooftop where he saw the creature in wonder. Just what the hell were you? Sasuke mused before shaking his head. He'd dwell on that later. The Uchiha still had a job to do, getting out of the academy. Hey, guys. Wait up, he called out before jumping after them. If the Uchiha scion would have looked carefully, he would have seen slight burn marks on the roof and a single red feather. Konoha Ninja Academy, Instructor Lounge 1700 hours, man, now I'm starting to feel the pain my old sensei used to feel when he graded our papers for the day. A chunin with dark eyes, spiky brown hair, and a bandage over his nose complained as he was shifting through essays, tests, quizzes, and the like that each student had taken for the week. Oh, put a sock in it, Kotetsu. You knew exactly what you were getting into when you signed up for this job, his partner chided. The male was of average height, brown hair, dark eyes, and wore his forehead protector on a bandana. Kotetsu snorted, putting an essay he was grading down. Okay, Izumo, first of all, I didn't sign up for this job. I just said yes when Hokage-sama asked me to. Izumo rolled his eyes and marked off some wrong answers on a test. He had that uncanny ability of doing two entirely different things at once. You do realize you could have turned it down, right? He asked rhetorically. I know, he replied evenly. I'm just making note of how difficult this job can be sometimes. Sure you are, Izumo clucked his teeth, not buying his excuses. Kotetsu sighed and chose not to respond, effectively ending the conversation. A pregnant silence reigned over the two chunin. The only audible noise was the slashing of red marks on students' papers. Not surprisingly, another set of perfect scores for the Golden Trio, Izumo dully remarked, handing out 3 papers to Kotetsu. The bandaged brunette whistled in awe. Wow, again? That's got to be a record or something, right? Izumo shook his head. Based on averages, no, they got a long way to go. They still have to beat the Densetsu no Sanin's record. Which was 96%, he answered, causing his friend to whistle in awe again. It'd be interesting if they surpass it. Because, from what it looks like, these 3 are another trio of legendary ninja for this generation of kids, Kotetsu pointed out, seemingly envisioning it already. Come on, Kotetsu, he tried to reason with his best friend, I know they may have fantastic grades, but don't you think it's a bit of a stretch? Actually, I agree with him. They both turned to the direction of the voice, belonging to none other than Iruka Yumano, chief instructor at the academy. He had a serene smile on his face at his 2 assistants. They both blinked. Iruka-senpai. Izumo cried out in sheer surprise. He thought the instructor had gone home already, as it technically wasn't his day to stay after classes let out. He gave a courteous nod and sat down with the 2 chunin. Izumo, he started off, picking up where he left off, you may not see it but I see great potential in these 3. Izumo sighed, still not convinced until he saw some hard evidence. Sure, they were acing their exams and tests. Ugh. He didn't know why he was so adamant about denying the obvious. Alas, it couldn't be helped, and they'd just have to accept that. For now, at least. Iruka put a hand on his shoulder. You'll see. Trust me. The brunette was firm in his declaration, if the serious look on his face was anything to go by. Izumo simply nodded, not wanting to prod the issue any longer. Need any help? The dolphin inquired, smirking a bit. Izumo and Kotetsu laughed. Please, they chorused, causing Irika to chuckle as he sat down to assist them in grading. "They'll all see, soon, Naruto. I believe in you." Hirono residence, 2000 hours, Sakura hummed to herself as she made her way to her humble abode. The pink-haired pseudo kunoichi had just left from a meal that Mikoto had made for both her and her male friends. Naruto had decided to stay over for the night, like he usually did. He was practically her sensei's second son in name, only. Unlike Sasuke, she was well aware of how Naruto perceived the Uchiha matriarch. The love and admiration he felt for her was undeniable. Either the raven-haired Uchiha was blind to this fact, or he seriously kept it to himself for unknown reasons. A frown adorned the youngest of the Golden Trio. Truthfully, she had wanted to stay over for the night, too, not wanting to be alone. Alas, it couldn't be helped considering she had to come home to her mother and bastard for a stepfather. A small, wicked smile uncharacteristically contorted its way upon her face as her eyes darkened with silent rage. She had made up her mind a long time ago, she was going to kill him. Painfully, slowly, and delicately. However, some part of her, admittedly, would have maybe given up on revenge if he had shown genuine remorse. There was none, no empathy and no guilty conscience. It was only a cold, sadistic bastard who took pleasure in stroking his ego and desires a bit too literally. The rosette-haired girl forced herself to calm down as she took a key out of her pocket and unlocked the door to her home. The smell of cigarette smoke flooded her nostrils, causing her to wince. Damn, did she hate when they did that? It was odd, though the entire house was in near-complete darkness, except for the faint microwave light in the kitchen a few meters in front of her. Were they not here? She inwardly snorted. Why was she surprised? Her mother started become less and less like a parent and more or less treated her like an inconvenience, at best. With a long sigh, Sakura made her way to the kitchen for some yogurt, before a voice made her stop cold. "You finally decided to come home, Sakura-chan," a deep voice echoed throughout the room. Her eyes widened to their greatest extent, and a sense of dread overcame her entire being. Her heart started to beat rapidly. "Tite Tetsuya," she stuttered out. What the hell was happening to her? She had been training for nearly 10 months. Preparing for one of these days. She had learned techniques academy students could only dream of accomplishing, and was, unquestionably, the most powerful female in her class. She didn't sense him, at all. A dark chuckle escaped from his lips. "In the flesh, Sakura-chan," he intoned. She heard the click of a lighter as its flame was brought to Tetsuya's mouth, which held a cigar. As the blaze ignited the tobacco products, she could see his smirk as he took a puff. With a snap of his fingers, a dim light came on in the room, showing he was sitting cross-legged on the couch. Sakura swallowed hard as her heart pounded against her ribcage and her breathing started to intensify in short, uncontrolled breaths. Her stepdad gave her a wicked grin. "Even after being in the academy and training as a shinobi, you still tremble in fear at the sheer sight of me. You have no idea how much that excites me." He licked his lips before blowing out a plume of smoke. Sakura started having an inner struggle with herself. The shinobi side of her that Mikoto had trained into a proud kunoichi in training and the little girl who stood in fear as she let the man she hated most dictate her life. Unfortunately, the latter was winning in an almost completely one-sided domination. A lone tear rolled down her cheeks. Tetsuya smirked. He had her. As her body started to completely panic, she barely noticed him as he caressed her soft cheeks. He forced her to look at him. His apathetic gaze terrified the 8-year-old to the extent that her knees wanted to give out then and there. Where's my mother?" Sakura inquired with a bit of a stutter. "Oh, you don't worry about her, Sakura," he gave her a grin as he traced his index finger across her soft lips, sending a chill up her spine. "I'm going to take very good care of you," he lied smoothly, still touching her lips. "Stop it." The sheer boldness had surprised both parties, Sakura more so. It was spoken softly, but the confidence and firmness stood present and prevalent. "What did you say?" Tetsuya asked dangerously. Sakura's eyes narrowed, newfound faith in her abilities. "I said, stop it," she yelled, swatting his hand away like it was a troublesome gnat. Tears of anger rolled down her cheek as the Haruno clenched her fists. "You leave me alone for nearly a year and now you come back hitting on me? What the fuck is wrong with you?" she roared, not caring if she later got in trouble for cursing at him for her mom. That needed to come out, lest she go completely insane. There was a pensive silence in the tension-filled air that was thick enough to nearly suffocate her. Even though her sight was blurry with the saline liquid secreting from her eyes rolling down, she could clearly see the rage in his eyes at being talked to like that. Sakura barely had time to put her arm up to block his backhand on pure reflex, which still sent shockwaves throughout her entire body. She was sent backward into the wall and slid down to sit on her buttocks. Brutal training from Mikoto or not, it'd be a long time before she'd be strong enough to go against a person who was actually trying to cause physical harm to her. Her left arm was bruised badly from the blow and she did everything in her power not to scream. Tetsuya picked her up by the collar of her dress, dragging her along the wall as he did so, causing her to feel a light burning sensation on her skin. He held her at his level. There was no perverted lust in his eyes, no wicked grins, and no licking of lips. Tetsuya wasn't just angry, he was completely furious. "No, Sakura. What the fuck is wrong with you?" he mocked her, adding pressuring on her collarbone which caused considerable pain. "I left you alone for 10 months. 10 motherfucking months. You know why? Because, that night, I was satisfied and it seemed you had learned your lesson of not defying me." His grip on her tightened, causing the poor girl to visibly stiffen in response, "But now, I see you've learned nothing." Sakura was seething in silent rage as her fists clenched. She didn't just hate this bastard. She completely loathed him. "Mayamo," she choked out. "Won't do a damn thing," he interrupted her. "You know why, Sakura?" This time, he did grin wickedly. "I know your mother more than you ever will. She sees you as a burden." The rosette-haired girl's eyes widened to their greatest extent. She shook her head in complete denial. "You don't believe me? How cute. It's true. You see, Sakura. Your father dying tore your mother in two, mentally and physically. You remember all those nights when you were very young where she'd take illegal substances and antidepressants and was violent to the extreme? The fact of the matter is, until I came along, she was nothing more than a ticking time bomb. It's because of me that she's like the way she is now." Sakura immediately caught on to the hidden meaning in his last statement. You mean," he couldn't help but grin at her shrewd perception. He always did enjoy not having to break it down to her. "That's right, I conditioned her so she'd be dependent on me. And leave you straight for myself, whenever you got old enough." Sakura couldn't believe what she was hearing, and yet, it made complete and utter sense. Why else would her own mother deny the blatantly obvious abuse? Her sensei suspected something was off, but she never had the guts to tell her. He finally let her go as she slumped to the floor, yet again. Clearly, he was satisfied from just dropping that bombshell on her. Seeing the tears in her eyes did nothing to make him empathize with her, and yet, at the same time, he felt no pleasure in it either. The dark-haired pedophile simply shrugged it off and simply walked away. Sakura stood up and bolted from her house and headed toward the Uchiha estate. She needed to see them at the moment. They were the only ones who she felt she could trust. No more secrets. It was time they all learned. Uchiha Estate, 2,100 hours, and checkmate, Naruto-kun, Mikoto squealed triumphantly as she moved in her shogi game board piece for a decisive win. "Again? Why?" Naruto quipped as tears rolled down his face comically as he shook his fist. His best friend patted him on the back as if to console him. "Oh, Naruto, don't worry about it. I mean, it's only your 10th straight loss tonight, Sasuke smirked, causing Naruto's tears to flow even faster. Mikoto simply laughed at her son's playful teasing of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. But I came so close. Naruto tried to plead his case to justify why he had lost so much. Close doesn't count in the real world, Naruto-kun, she reminded him, earning a groan in response. She smiled. Besides, you've only been playing for 1 week, while I've been playing for years on end. Sasuke smiled and shook his head at Naruto's grumbling about losing at the coveted strategy game. He never would have thought in a million years that watching the game from the sidelines could be so intense. One more game, Naruto looked at his sensei seriously. Winner takes all. Mikoto raised an eyebrow. You do realize we haven't been betting anything, right? She rhetorically countered. Damn it. Naruto sulked as laid his head down on the table. It was a Friday night, and like usual, Naruto had stayed over at the Uchiha estate. Although this was brought with some problems with some of the other members of the clan, a quick talk from Mikoto changed their minds quickly enough. So, now, at best, they treated him neutrally. Seeing the blonde hanging out at the Uchiha household was about as common as a housefly. So you guys up for some training? Mikoto asked, still amused at how Naruto had taken his 10 straight losses. Naruto lifted his head up and shook it in the negative. This earned him a curious look from the Uchiha matriarch. No, I'd prefer all 3 of us train together, Naruto explained. It just wouldn't sit well with me that me and Sasuke are here getting stronger, leaving Sakura-chan out in the cold. I get that we won't be able to train together all the time in the future, but this isn't the future, is it? He countered with sarcasm. Judging from Sasuke's silence, Mikoto had to assume that he agreed with the Uzumaki. Mikoto couldn't help but smirk. Smartass, she thought to herself, bemused. Alright, then, fine, we won't try, Mikoto cut off as her eyes widened, sensing a familiar presence and looking off into the distance outside. Ka-san, what's wrong? Sasuke worriedly asked. Naruto looked at the distress in her eyes, too. Use the Hankyuurai, and you'll know exactly why, she replied. Her voice grimly chimed and her face left no traces of humor. Confused, the 2 boys did a ram seal and did as they were told. Not even a second later, their eyes widened to their fullest extent. Naruto stood up immediately. Sakura-chan, he exclaimed. Her chakra was pulsating all throughout the estate and beyond. Let's go, Naruto. Sasuke stood up in determination and the 2 boys headed off, ignoring their sensei at the moment. Mikoto joined them by jumping in front, leading the way. It didn't take long before they saw a pink blur hop over the estate walls. Sakura was running at half her speed, with a bleeding lip, and tears flowing. This alarmed her sensei and male friends considerably. Mikoto sped up ahead of the 2, her maternal instincts immediately taking over. The rosette-haired girl nearly jumped into the Uchiha matriarch's arms, breaking down completely. Mikoto fell on her knees while holding Sakura close as she sobbed audibly. Sakura-chan. Naruto yelled in alarm as he and Sasuke came up to the both of them. Sasuke. Go get some medical supplies. Now. Mikoto roared. Her son nodded and ran back into the house. Sakura. What the hell happened? Mikoto asked the girl who was crying profusely. Naruto looked at her body and clenched his fists. It didn't take a genius to figure out someone had caused physical harm to her. Sie-kan, please. Inside, she stuttered out in between sobs. Mikoto nodded and picked up the girl bridal style. She still held her close and Naruto and her made their way back inside. Sasuke already had a first aid kit ready for them as Mikoto, literally, kicked everything off the table where she and Naruto played shogi. The pieces fell to the floor, scattering everywhere. Not a single care in the world was given by anyone in the room at the subsequent mess. The Uchiha matriarch gently laid the girl on the table while surveying her wounds. She was badly injured. Her left arm was bruised to the point where Mikoto was extremely surprised that the bones inside were still in one piece. She knew from years of experience that the marks on her were caused by some form of abuse. Sakura's lower lip bled, congealing hemoglobin caking to it, and she had marks on her collarbone, too. What in the hell happened? 2 hours ago, the girl left her estate perfectly fine. Mikoto shook her head. They could play 20 questions later. Right now, they needed to patch up the 8-year-old. The process only took about 10 minutes or so with the four in relative silence. The only words coming from their mouths were the various medical supplies and medicinal pills Mikoto asked either boy to fetch at any given moment. Sakura finally sat up on her own, the painkillers she had taken kicking in just in time. Although she still felt a little pain, it was nowhere close to where it was 15 minutes ago. She nodded gratefully to the three most important people in her life. Naruto sat behind her as she leaned slight against him as support. Mikoto and Sasuke sat in front of her on the table. Sakura. What happened to you? Mikoto inquired, brooking no argument to put up any sort of excuse. If it was what she suspected, it was someone was going to pay dearly. Sensei, she began softly, do you know of a jutsu that blocks sound? That earned her weird looks from all three present. Sakura, why do you? Sasuke began before Sakura cut him off. I don't want anyone else to know, she yelled out as tears rolled down her cheek again. Naruto, Sasuke, and Mikoto visibly flinched at her outburst. The brunette woman complied and made 5 hand seals ending in ram. There was a small pulse from her and all sound within the room got cancelled out. Sakura effectively had the privacy she'd requested. Who did this to you? Mikoto asked with narrowed eyes. My stepdad, she softly spoke barely above a whisper. Naruto clenched his fists as a look of anger contorted on his face. Sasuke gritted his teeth and his mother's eyes turned to slits. Describe what happened, Sasuke urged, almost parroting what his mom and blonde companion had asked not too much earlier. Sakura nodded, expecting this inquiry. Well, I went home, completely content with the meal you gave me. She tried to smile, but failed miserably. I opened the door only to find the house completely empty, save for the microwave light in the kitchen. Then that's when I heard him. My stepdad was in the house the entire time. My heart was beating so fast I thought it would burst at any moment. That's when he was touching my lips, trying to lead me into a false sense of security. Mikoto's eyes widened in anger at Sakura's implication, while it was lost on the two boys. Obviously, they were not familiar with what she was getting at. Unbeknownst to all of them, the Kyuubi was listening intently as well. She continued, I told him to stop and she started to sob again. He just got angry and slapped me against the wall. I managed to block it, but it still hurt like hell. I fell on the ground, and he picked me up and slammed against the wall with enough force that I thought the wall was going to come down. He told me how my mother only saw me as a burden and conditioned her so that she depended on him. Naruto started shaking in anger as his irises switched between their normal cerulean and as a crimson shade. How dare that bastard lay a finger on her? He was her stepdad, for God's sake. That son of a bitch, Sasuke cursed, punching the wall near him with a closed fist. Mikoto was pissed to the point where her son's cursing in front of her was not her primary concern. I'm going to kick that guy's ass, Naruto vowed, punching his right fist into his cupped left. The Uchiha matriarch chose not to say anything, fearing that she would go into a rant that pissed her off to the point where'd she seriously consider killing the bastard who dared to hurt her pupil. That's not the worst part, she choked out, swallowing a bit of mucus. Mikoto stared at her critically. Surely she couldn't mean. Oh, please, by the gods, don't let her mean. What are you talking about, Sakura-chan? What's worse than this bastard hitting you? Naruto naively asked. There was a tense silence in the room for a good 30 seconds. No one moved, no one spoke, and hell, they barely breathed. He touches me. Gropes me in places he shouldn't, Sakura finally revealed, dropping the bombshell. Detonating the proverbial pipe bomb, Naruto and Sasuke's eyes widened in sheer surprise at that particular revelation. Now, they finally understood why Sakura had spaced out at random times and didn't want to tell them. Instead of pure anger, they empathized with her with understanding. Their sensei, on the other hand. He did what? She roared as her eyes were filled with complete and utter rage, burning like coal in a furnace. The trio started to subconsciously back away from the Uchiha matriarch. They had never seen her this angry before. "Where's the bastard?" she practically demanded from the Haruno. "Tell me now, Sakura, so I can give him a slow and painful death." Judging from the look in her eyes, Trio knew she was dead serious on carrying out that threat the minute Sakura gave the poor soul his whereabouts. "No. Please don't, sensei," she cried out. Sakura's reasoning for stopping her sensei from brutally murdering Tetsuya was twofold. Firstly, while she disliked what her mother had become, she was still, at the end of the day, her mother. That was a fact that would never change. Who knew what the sudden death of Tetsuya would do to her mom's already fragile psyche? Secondly, she wanted the bastard all to herself. She was going to kill him and she'd be damned if anyone else got that honor. "Sakura." Mikoto spoke sternly, trying to calm down from the eye-opener that one of her pupils was actually being molested in her own home. Just the sheer thought of it disgusted her to no end. What kind of sick bastard would hit on and touch inappropriately an 8-year-old girl? Mikoto breathed in and out in a vain attempt to calm her nerves, lest she'd lash out and kill someone in the heat of the moment. "I know, but you have to understand that he's essentially the only one keeping my mother together, as insane as it sounds. I know you want nothing more than to rip him to shreds. Believe me, I do as well. But, if he dies, my mother's depression will likely kick in, making my home life worse than it already is," she spoke solemnly as she cried for millionth time tonight. Mikoto intoned. She didn't even bother trying to hide her disappointment. An idea struck her from out of the blue like a thunderbolt. Sakura told her not to kill him, she never said not to. A wicked grin adorned her face for a split second. Her pupils were none the wiser. "All right, Sakura, I'll abide by your wishes," she conceded with a huff. "Thank you, sensei," she thanked with a sigh, leaning back against the blonde. Sasuke simply gave the two an emotionless stare. Mikoto observed this, and made a mental note to address it soon enough. "However, you're staying here tonight." 3 pairs of eyes went wide. Clearly, they weren't expecting that. Sakura opened her mouth to protest, but Mikoto held up her palm, silencing her. "No, you are," she insisted. "In fact, I think I want you to stay with us from now on. I'm not going to sit here in good conscience and let you go home to that sick, perverted bastard. Not anymore. You're staying here." The finality in the tone of her voice told all. She wasn't joking, at all. The rosette-haired kunoichi in training sighed. She knew that her sensei's decision was final and there was nothing she could do to change her mind. Not that she really wanted her to, anyhow. Sakura nodded in acceptance. Mikoto stood up and dusted herself off. "I'm going to go find a room for you, all right? We can worry about transferring your belongings here later. But, for now, we'll just have to deal." Mikoto-sensei?" Sakura began with a slight blush. "What is it, Sakura?" The girl looked extremely embarrassed. "I was wondering. Could I room with Naruto-kun and Sasuke-kun?" she inquired, still red in the face. Said boys' jaws dropped all the way to the floor as they looked at each other. Mikoto blinked owlishly. "Wow. Sure," she said a bit hesitantly. "Ka-san/sensei, you can't be serious." Sasuke and Naruto protested. It wasn't the fact that he didn't want Sakura near him, it was the fact that she was a girl and it just wasn't right. Mikoto snorted. Oh, can it, you too? If you guys were much older, then I'd have a problem with it, but I trust you guys. It's really not that big of a deal. She'll just have to go to another room to get changed when she needs to. The two boys grunted out their reluctance, but accepted. All right, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let me go find some sleeping wear and some sheets for you to sleep on in Sasuke-kun's room. She smiled and left the room. While she thought about it, she made a seal to disable the sound displacement jutsu she had set up earlier. So, Sasuke began, unsure of where the conversation should go, considering what they had just learned. Sakura sighed and turned around to face both of them. Guys, thank you. For what, Sakura-chan? Naruto asked with a tilt of his head. For understanding and respecting my right not to tell you until now. I truly appreciate you guys not trying to prod the issue when it wasn't needed, she explained. Sasuke shook his head. It wasn't a big deal, Sakura. However, he punched his palm with his fist. I still want to take a shot at the bastard for what he did to you. Naruto's eyes turned bloody crimson for a split second. Not before me, Sasuke. I call first dibs, he said with a darker edge lining his voice. Neither of you are touching him, Sakura spoke with an air of finality. Her jade eyes turned to slits as her eyes narrowed. He's mine and mine alone. I'm the one who's going to kill that sick perverted fuck, she hissed venomously. The two boys flinched, yet again. They still weren't used to Sakura swearing so vehemently. But don't tell sensei that, okay? I don't want her worrying about it, okay? We won't, Sasuke assured her. She smirked and held up both her pinkies out toward them. Pinky swears, she intoned looking at them playfully, trying her best not to giggle. Seriously? Come on, she pouted, giving them a slight puppy dog looks. By the gods, that face. Naruto thought with a bit of sweat rolling down his temples. Must not give in. From the look on Sasuke's face, it seemed he had to deal with the same inner struggle. You know you want to, she teased, a bit flirtatiously. Fine, they both said simultaneously, hooking their pinkies around hers. Pinky swear. Sakura smiled and pulled them both into a hug. Thanks, guys. It really means a lot to me, she told them sincerely. They both grinned at her as the three best friends felt content in each other's arms. A cough broke them out of their stupor and they immediately pulled apart. Their sensei was leaning against the door frame with a smirk on her face. Heh, I may have to put you three in separate rooms, after all, she teased, though her humor was lost on the trio. No, we were just. Mikoto rolled her eyes. Relax, guys. I'm only kidding, she dryly remarked. Sakura sighed in relief. Anyhow, I've got your pseudo-bed made in Sasuke-kun's room. Don't stay up too late, as we're going to the blacksmith tomorrow morning. Seriously? Naruto and Sakura asked, the former drooling at the prospect. Mikoto already had them practice with bakken, wooden sword, and staves made out of the same material. Unsurprisingly, to Mikoto at least, they seemed to take upon the weapons as if they were born to wield them. Strange how just about everything they wanted to specialize in, they had a natural talent for. Meh, it wasn't worth reading too much into it. The Uchiha matriarch nodded in confirmation, smiling with a bit of tender affection. Time for you guys to work with some real metal. Naruto grinned and held Sasuke in a headlock. Hell yeah, and who knows, Sasuke here might find a weapon he likes. The Uchiha scion snorted, forcing the blonde off him. Yeah, right. I told you how I feel. Sakura-chan, remind us of this moment when he picks out a weapon tomorrow, all right? He grinned confidently. She gave him a thumbs up in response. Mikoto simply shook her head. The dynamic between these three never ceased to amuse her. They liked to poke fun at each other from time to time, but the bond that existed was undeniable. All right, you three, time for bed. You all can shower in the morning. It's been a long night. Tomorrow, your training intensifies. She couldn't help but snicker at the looks of horror on their faces. Damn, she loved her job. The three academy students collectively sighed as they made their way to Sasuke's room. Since Sasuke and Naruto were already in their pajamas, they really didn't need to worry about having to change in front of their pink-haired companion. Nearly a half hour later, the three friends were each in their beds in the darkness of night. They could barely see 2 feet in front of them, let alone each other. However, that didn't stop them from having conversation. Wow, all three of us all in one room at night. Never thought I'd see this day, Sasuke mused aloud. Well, we'll probably have to do this on missions. Might as well get used to it, now, Sakura replied, her eyes actually closed, but still listening intently. They heard Naruto snort. Yeah, but the difference is that we're in nice, comfy beds. Out there it's nothing but good old Mother Nature and all her hazards. Got me there, Sakura conceded with a long sigh. Naruto did have the habit of being a snarky smartass. I guess it came with him being the de facto team leader in the sense. He was certainly qualified. Despite Sasuke being talented and trained in the ninja way before any of them, Naruto caught up extremely fast and surpassed him, if only just barely. In any case, we've got a long way to go. Ka-san says we have to stay the entire 4 years at the academy. It was something about us growing up too fast, I don't know. Either way, it's troublesome. Damn right it is, but at least it gives me enough time to create the technique, Naruto added as a simply afterthought. Yeah. Sakura agreed before she blinked and sat up from her bed. Wait a minute. What technique? Now, she was entirely confused. Sasuke sat up as well. All right, Naruto, spill it. What the hell are you talking about? He outright demanded. He was his best friend and he'd be damned if he'd be the last one to find out about this kind of crap. Naruto grinned sheepishly. Well, it's something I've been thinking about. You guys remember reading about the Yondaime, right? He asked rhetorically. Sakura looked at Naruto's silhouette with a raised eyebrow. Yeah, what about? Hold on. Don't tell me you're trying to create a technique similar to the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique. The Hiraishin was an S-ranked jutsu created by the Yondaime Hokage and was considered by many to be as close to a perfect jutsu as one could get. The only thing that was truly known about it was it allowed the Yondaime to move at instantaneous speeds. Everything else, the young Hokage took with him, seemingly, to the grave. Replicating it was virtually impossible, now. Well, not exactly, but it has given me an idea, he told them. Wait, Sasuke repeated, holding his hand in a T-shape. First off, we're 9 years old. How the hell are you going to invent a bastardized version of, quite possibly, the most lethal jutsu in existence? How the hell do you even begin to create a technique in the first place? Naruto rolled his eyes. Okay, first off, the technique I'm envisioning is nothing like the Hiraishin. The only thing it has in common with it, is speed. Although, it's obviously much slower than the 4th Hokage's prized technique. So it's a speed technique? Sakura inquired. Yes, Naruto confirmed. Well, what about the Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique? Doesn't that serve the same purpose? Naruto smirked. Just the question he was waiting on. Technically yes. However, most shinobi only use Shunshin casually and outside of battle, as it has few practical uses unless you're a master of it like the Sandaime Reikage and Shisui-san. Sasuke grimaced a bit at the mention of his cousin, but ignored it in favor of listening to Naruto. You see, guys, I've been studying the Shunshin no Jutsu a lot, and while I will learn the technique for its casual use, I want a technique that allows me to use my faster than normal reflexes and speed for practical use in combat. He definitely wasn't exaggerating. Naruto's reflexes were borderline ridiculous for his age, reacting to things seemingly before it happens. I wonder how long till the boy realizes these natural gifts were inherited from his father. The fox thought, amused, once again listening discreetly. Sure, he could tell Naruto about his heritage, but as far as he was concerned it wasn't his place to tell. Plus, he never asked him, so why bother bringing up the subject? Now, before I go into this in vivid detail, I've never done this. This is all theory from me at this point, Naruto warned. He heard them nod and continue. Saw speed, along with most measures that have to do with the laws of physics, have lots of things in common, one of the more notable being friction. It's the force that resists motion. Often, it's most commonly demonstrated by sliding against various surfaces. Soy was thinking, what if you use chakra to temporarily take away this friction under your feet? Since chakra has been known to do a hell of a lot of things, I'd think I could do this somehow. Regardless, I'd glide myself along this frictionless environment at any pace I want, sort of like a blur. The problem I see is firstly, how to make myself frictionless, and secondly, how to bring the friction back to stop myself within a split second. Mind you, this is what I've been theorizing for a while now. It's about as concrete as it's going to get until I actually sit down and create it. Eyes wow. Sakura said in awe at Naruto's detail. She never took him to study physics. Then again, it was in the interest of bettering himself as a ninja and overcoming a problem, so it stood to reason. Wow, Naruto. You certainly did a lot of research into this. Question, though. Say you are successful in creating it, you got a name? Sasuke asked, smirking. Actually I do. If it all goes well, I'm thinking of calling it Ibitsumi, Naruto answered. Distorted step, eh? That actually fits well based on your theoretical description. Good job, Sakura complimented. Naruto smiled. Thanks, guys. There was a comfortable silence between them. A groan escaped Naruto's mouth. Yes, I will teach it to you guys, sheesh, he said with a roll of his eyes. They both laughed out loud. You know us too well, Naruto-kun. Sasuke couldn't help but agree with the rosette-haired female. The cerulean-orbed pseudo-shinobi shook his head. Yeah, he replied dismissively, turning on his side. All right, enough talking. Let's try and get some sleep. Knowing Sensei, she's probably going to put us through hell, tomorrow. A collective moan was uttered as they sighed. Ah, well, it was nothing they could do about it, so why worry? Silence reigned over the entire room as they each, one by one, fell completely asleep. Yuki no Kuni, ultranationalist military base, 1800 hours, Obano Kaseki walked along the metal tiles of Alpha Base situated in the land of snow. This facility was nearly 60,000 square feet in total size, and had many state-of-the-art buildings equipped with the latest in radio technology, as well as material and resources that made it self-sufficient. Alpha Base was the main foreign base for the ultranationalists, outside of Delta Base in Shimo no Kuni, Land of Frost, and Echo Base on a remote island nearly 100 miles off the coast of Mizu no Kuni, Land of Water. The latter of which was only accessible by air. Obano saw a large, 2-story tall eagle with a large brown saddle that seemed to be holding cargo and supplies fly down into an underpass. A long human sat on its neck and was seemingly guiding it like one controlled a horse, a rein included over its beak. Its flight call could be heard as it vanished into the underpass. Obano couldn't help but to marvel at Hideyoshi's sheer genius. 10 years ago, he had diverted some serious funding into building bases overseas that were actually worth a damn. The ultranationalists needed ways to test most of their illegal weapons away from the watchful eyes of the Sandame, and now Yondame, Raikage. They had gone the extra mile to make sure that these bases were secure, safe, and most of all, kept completely secret. Only the most trusted members of the organization were allowed to go to any of the bases, and even then strict regulations were followed. The Emerald Fang had heard talks of Hideyoshi making deals and negotiators with a character in this land. Doto, was it? In any case, whatever the ultranationalist leader had promised the now ruler of the land of snow, he left the extremist shinobi of the hidden cloud well alone. He walked into a small building that belonged entirely to him. Paying a fee from their own pockets, an ultranationalist could request that a private house be built there in case they were stationed there for a while whenever they weren't needed back at the village. It wasn't anywhere near as nice as his house in the 3rd district, but it beat living in the barracks like the rest. "Sensei. You're back," Omoi observed, letting out a chilled breath. He was wearing standard Kyomo Genin outfit, except it was customized to fit the near 0-degree weather outside. The 11-year-old sat in a chair, drinking some hot chocolate. Obano nodded in acknowledgement and shut the door behind him and shivered a bit. He was not a fan of frigid temperatures and he couldn't wait to go back home. "Where are Karui and Samui?" he inquired, dusting some snow off his thin jacket. He pointed to the living room and saw the 2 kunoichi sleeping on opposite ends of the couch. Obano couldn't help but to smile. He hated to disturb them from their slumber, but alas, the demonstration was today that would likely revolutionize the way the shinobi world wars would be fought. The Jounin made his way toward them and shook them both awake. He got groggy groans in response. "Look, I know you guys are tired, but we have to be present for the test today. Once it's over, you guys can sleep all you want, all right?" Samui sighed and Karui groaned, but nonetheless, they complied, getting up from the couch to put on their jackets. "I can't stand the fucking cold," Karui cursed in disdain. "Got that right," Samui agreed. She was willing to deal with the chilly winters back home, but here? Hell no. Obano chuckled. "Come on, you 3. Let's go and see if this actually works," he said, heading for the door. The younger boy cocked his eyebrow. "You still haven't exactly told us what this revolutionary idea is." Omoi crossed his arms. His sensei had a knowing smirk as if to say, "Watch and see." The 3 grunted at not being told up front and simply followed their sensei out of the room. Yuki no Kuni, Alpha Base, Hangar A, nicknamed Eagle's Nest, 18-15 hours, Team Omoi and Obano made their way through the Eagle's Nest, along with a plethora of their brothers-in-arms seemingly working around the clock to keep the place up and running. The hangar was absolutely massive and was easily the largest structure in Alpha Base at an astonishing 125 feet from the ground to the highest point in the ceiling. Its width from end to end was about 9 times that of its height. There were enormous stalls where eagles, hawks, and falcons of various sizes were being fed their usual diet consisting of fish, mice, and rodents, among others. Some of the birds were so massive that ladders nearly 8 times the sizes of an average man were used just to reach their beaks. So far, all of the birds had remained calm and tranquil and seemingly didn't have a single issue with their human handlers. "Okay," Karui said aloud, a bit annoyed. "Come on, sensei. What the hell is up with all these birds? They're goddamn huge," she exclaimed a bit in awe. The talons on those things could easily carry any of the 4 of them with room to spare. A small shudder went up the kunoichi's spine. Obano couldn't help but to chuckle. "Well, guys, these eagles are pretty much going to be a great asset to us in the future. Their applications are practically limitless. Ah. Just watch and you'll see what I mean." His students gave him a sidelong look, still a bit skeptical. A masculine voice was heard over the intercom system within the hangar and spoke in a commanding and militaristic tone. "All personnel, this is Overlord, you are to be advised and clear the runway for support package Bravo." Obano raised an eyebrow. "Bravo, eh?" The first eagle he saw a while back must have been Alpha, or the first bird to arrive. "All cargo personnel are to stand by for safe transport." Omoi turned to the jaded-eyed Jounin. "Overlord?" he asked, puzzlement lining his features. He observed multiple shinobi moving into positions, while a lone male was seemingly directing something in the air akin to an air traffic controller. He's a relatively high-ranking member of the organization. That's his call sign. It's a way to protect identities in the extremely low chance we have intruders or uninvited guests. Some of us have call signs, others don't. That's the point. You never know who might be an enemy, even in a base this secure. Security protocols dictate that we don't take any chances. Wow, Samui whistled in awe. You guys don't play around when it comes to this kind of stuff, the 11-year-old observed. Obano shook his head. We can't afford not to. Overlord's voice came over the intercom again, except this time there were clearly echoes, meaning his voice could be heard throughout the entire headquarters. Sand Bravo 6, you are clear for landing. Proceed to Eagle's Nest with caution. Here it comes, Obano told them. As all three of them carefully watched the skyline as the hangar bay doors opened to the darkness of night. Team Omoy watched as a massive bird started to approach the hangar. Omoy's eyes grew wide. The further the massive flying behemoth edged closer, the larger it appeared to be. He consciously took a step back as the menacing eagle flew into the aptly named Eagle's Nest. The extremely sharp talons scrapped the metal tiles as it used inertia to slow itself down into a complete stop. The jaws of Team Omoy, along with dozens of other ultranationalist shinobi, dropped completely to the floor, rendered speechless. This eagle was easily over 100 feet tall, a wingspan taking up half the hangar, and it had blood-red eyes to boot. Running along its main vertebrae was an enormous saddle that connected itself across the midsection for support. In this saddle contained dozens upon dozens of boxes, crates, and containers, among others filled with food, medicine and spare and replacement medical equipment, hundreds of bottles of fresh water, raw materials, and other miscellaneous supplies. All right. Let's get her loaded off. Ayako was getting a bit tired with all that weight on her, a man, dressed in a rather strange outfit, ordered. He was obviously dressed for the weather, but his outfit was completely out of the norm. It was an all-white jumpsuit with fur, meant to protect him from the cold. The dark-skinned man was wearing protective goggles as well as ear-muffs as he held the eagle, presumably called Ayako, steady with the reins in his hands. Several ultranationalist chunin jumped on the saddle where the supplies were, while others prepped a loading system beside the massive silver-colored beast. One by one, crates were sent down a conveyor belt that rotated downwards. At the bottom, shinobi and staff carried the supplies to and where they needed to go. Wow, Omoy was the first to speak up from his stupor. Obano couldn't help but to grin. Marvelous, isn't it? Normally, it'd be a logistical nightmare to maintain one base this far away from home, let alone 3. Add in the fact that this place is unknown to a large amount of the shinobi world and you're talking about something that's virtually impossible. However, Hideyoshi-sama came up with an ingenious idea. Taming the gargantuan birds of prey in the valley that sat directly behind his clan estate. Ayako, there is one of the 20 largest birds we have under our command. Samui and Karui blinked. You mean there are 20 other birds just as big as that thing? No way in hell. They shook their hands in denial. Believe it, kids, Obano replied seriously. At any rate, those birds can carry far more cargo than we initially thought. Those wings are powerful enough to keep themselves up along with extra amounts of weight. It shattered our naive perception of what birds were and weren't capable of, he explained. I see, Omoy thought as the lazy eyes he was known for returned to his face, though it was evident he was extremely impressed. I wonder. Could you drop supplies to the field directly? He asked in wonder. Obano blinked at him and then chuckled, putting a hand on his shoulder. He always knew how to ask the right questions. If they were impressed with that, then what was next would likely completely blow their minds. Omoy's answer to that. You'll see in due time, he remarked a bit cryptically. The ashen-haired shinobi simply sighed, not wanting to broach the issue and knowing it was futile. Karui giggled while Samui shook her head. Alright, Hayato-sama, that's the last of it, a female ultranationalist jounin called out to the pilot of the massive bird of prey. Ayako shook her back, seemingly glad that she had all that extra weight off of her. Glad you got that weight off of you, huh? Hayato spoke to the eagle, whose eyes seemingly narrowed. You try carrying about 5 tons of human items on your back and see how well you do, Hayato-kun, Ayako sarcastically replied. It was unlikely that anyone else besides Hayato heard her speak, due to the amount of activity going on in the hangar. Alright, fine. I'll treat you to some fish when we get back to the village, he promised, but Ayako didn't look convinced as she brought her wingspan in and made the huge effort to turn completely around. I'm perfectly able to hunt fish on my own, thank you very much. Hayato palmed his face. Sheesh, Kay, I get it. What does a guy have to do to get some respect around here? If the enormous silver bird could smile, she would have done so. You know I love you, she replied humorously. Sometimes, I wonder, he retorted with a snort. Anyway, you're free for the rest of the night. I still hear there's plenty of food in the river in the mountains. Perhaps you'll find some good fish there? Maybe I'll check it out. Good. Also keep an eye out for any suspicious activity. Hayato could have sworn he heard the female eagle groan. Do you need to remind me of that every time? Sheesh. The pilot chuckled. I guess not, but it bears worth repeating. Either way, I wish you luck. Good hunting. He jumped off the eagle and she wordlessly made her way to the edge of the pseudo-runway and jumped off the cliff and flew off into the distance. Hayato dusted some snow off of his jumpsuit and removed the helmet and goggles. Jet black hair and brown eyes adorned his face along with a scar across his right eye similar to a certain cyclopean Konoha jounin. The dark-skinned male cracked his neck as he saw Obano and his pupils heading toward him. Ah. Obano. It's good to see you, he greeted the jounin as if they were old friends, which they were. They shook hands and grinned at one another. Obano noticed the golden eagle patch on his left breast. You're a captain, now. You're moving on up in the ranks, I see, the Emerald Fang noted with a smile. Hayato scratched the back of his head sheepishly. Yeah, I guess you can say that. Hideyoshi-sama was the one who requested me to officially bring WR Hawk's public. At least to our brothers and sisters. Gods above know that those bastards back home couldn't have thought of an idea this ingenious, he spoke in disgust. Team Omoi stayed silent at this, unsurprised in the least. Personal grudges against the United Cloud and the Raikage were about as ordinary as the common cold amongst those of the ultranationalists. Indeed, Obano agreed. It is a great honor that our, he paused a bit. Leader has bestowed upon you, he added cautiously. He felt a chill run down his spine. He had almost slipped up. So these are the 3 pupils I had been hearing about. Hayato grinned, all but changing the subject completely. Hayato Sika, at your service, he introduced with a slightly dramatic bow for comedic effect. Team Omoi chuckled, amused. Omoi. Karui. Samui. Short, sweet, and to the point. Ah, I see. The Taicho looked at a clock on the hangar walls and his eyes widened. Ah. I got a 10-minute window, he said, hurrying off somewhere. He seems nice, Samui noted smiling. More like total weirdo, Karui stuck out her tongue. All right, enough, Obano bemusedly chuckled. Come on, he's probably doing that presentation. Hayato's voice was heard over a bullhorn. All newly arrived members on base, could you please report to the front of the hangar? His voice bellowed in a bit of an echo. Omoi winced. Yeah, they definitely needed to replace that thing. Normally, the process of getting everyone to collectively move to one spot could have taken anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes depending on the size of the crowd. However, the discipline of these ninja ran far deeper than the average Kyumo shinobi. Hayato stood on a podium, and before him, an audience of about 250 hardened and cold-blooded assassins. The dark-skinned Taicho cleared his throat before speaking. "Good evening, everyone," he began cordially, and they returned his gesture with a wave of nods. "Unfortunately, Hideyoshi-sama couldn't be here today as he had to take care of some important business back in the village, and as such he has tasked me to explain what you all just witnessed about 10 minutes ago." Slight murmurs swept through the crowd. What you all just witnessed was a birth of a revolution that will no doubt change the dynamic of how the Shinobi World Wars will be fought. We call it WR Hawk S, or Aerial Warfare Hawk Squadron. By taming the enormous birds of prey in the valleys of Kyumo, we've managed to put these creatures to extraordinary use, Hayato explained, walking back and forth. The WR Hawk S pilot had their complete and undivided attention. From the looks on their faces, they seemed genuinely interested in the subject matter. Team Omoi was no exception. Members of WR Hawk S signed the summoning contract from the Akechi clan, which, obviously, Hideyoshi-sama controls. The program began in secret over 4 years ago, around the same time Alpha Base here was nearly finishing completion. I finished my training here a year ago to this day almost. I'm what's known as a pilot. Make no mistake, people, these majestic creatures are highly intelligent and, like nearly all summoning contracts, are able to speak in our tongue. That being said, they are not knowledgeable of the way we humans conduct things at certain points. Sure, we could train them how to deliver cargo without a human assistant steering them in the right direction, so to speak, but, like all things in this world, it's simply a time and money issue. Everyone seemed to nod in acknowledgement. It had made complete sense. Training the eagles to have a cognitive map of the entire elemental nations would be a true challenge. It was simply easier on the bird to have a human helper instead. As far as we know, maximum payload for our largest breeds is about 5 tons. Add any more and we'd be effectively forcing them into a slow, painful, and agonizing death. So long as it's under the weight limit, just about anything can be fitted on the saddles that we've created to hold all shipments. Including ourselves, Hayato smirked. A wave of confusion swept through all of the ultranationalist shinobi present, and the Taicho was about to explain before he was interrupted by Overlord on his personal radio. "Hayato Taicho, this is Overlord, do you copy, over?" Hayato put on his headset and held up a finger, excusing himself. "This is Hayato speaking. Go ahead, sir. The first air wing is en route to your positions. ETA, about 3 minutes. Move your crowd outside so that all can see for the final test, over." "Roger that." Hayato, out, he acknowledged with a smile, disconnecting the radio. "Okay, everyone, you heard the man. Outside, now." The shinobi presence didn't need to be told twice, as they made their way out, following his orders without hesitation. Karui groaned. "Damn! Do we have to go outside? It's so damn cold," she complained. Omoi grunted in annoyance. "Can it, Karui? I may not be a huge fan of the frigid weather either, but complaining about it constantly isn't going to magically make your body warm." Samui sighed. She was about to complain and agree with the redhead, but she knew she'd get a lecture from Omoi as well. He was team leader, after all. Karui simply huffed, but said nothing in return. Obano simply shook his head amused. "Kids, skies of Yuki no Kuni, 1000 m up, ETA to Alpha Base, 90 seconds, nearly 1,000 feet in the air. In the skies of Yuki no Kuni were 15 eagles flying in V formation. Although not in the same class as a Yako in terms of size, they were still relatively huge. On the base of all 15's necks were cloud shinobi who wore the same jumpsuit as Hayato did, except with extra protection from being so high up in the sky. On their backs were the same types of saddles. Instead of cargo, however, there were shinobi. There were about 20 each, although it could hold 30 more. They were covered from head to toe in white-colored gear, goggles, and a large backpack. The pilot at the head of the V formation turned his head slightly to the Taicho behind him. 60 seconds. The Taicho nodded and turned back to his small platoon of shinobi. Although this was a demonstration and an exercise, they were taking it seriously as if they were in a real war. That way, if mistakes were made, they could be ironed out right then and there. All right, listen up. We're 60 seconds from the drop point. You're the first wing, the bread and butter of the WR Hawk's squadron. We're known as the best at what we do. When we land, I want you to lock down Alpha Base as if it were under attack from enemy forces. Am I clear? Sir, they all chorused in unison. The Taicho sent hand signals to the other 15 captains leading the other platoons. They all acknowledged him. 30 seconds. All 20 of the shinobi crept to the edge of the saddle, looking down fearlessly as Alpha Base came into view. Everything truly looked like the size of an ant from this high up. Hey guys, I can see my house from up here, a random jumper Neen called out. This earned the chuckles of the entire platoon. It was a joke that was often said to calm the nerves of jumpers. Surprisingly, it was pretty effective. 10 seconds. This was it. Their palms were a bit sweaty as they waited in excited glee at the opportunity to show off their skills. They saw the pilot's countdown with their fingers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go! 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 The Taicho shouted, jumping off the eagle and effectively letting gravity take hold of him. His platoon followed one by one. They all jumped off. They were joined by the platoons on the other eagles. The eagles turned on a dime, headed west of Alpha Base back to Kyomogakure. Yuki no Kuni, Alpha Base, 1830 hours. Team Omoi's eyes widened as they watched 300 men descend toward the earth. Obano had a smirk on his face the entire time. Sensei. Are they crazy? A fall from that height, even for shinobi, would kill them instantly. Samui shrieked in unhidden alarm. It would, the Emerald Fong acknowledged, but what if you had a device that slowed your descent down, sparing you from a fatal fall? Samui's eyes narrowed. How? Such a devastating texist, her words trailed off as her jaw dropped to the floor. A large, jellyfish-shaped device came out of the backpacks of the jumper ninja. Dozens upon dozens of strings were attached to the outer shell, as it slowly, but surely, slowed their descent towards the base. Omoi, Karui, Samui, Obano called them, that is what is known as a parachute. When I said we were going to utterly revolutionize how shinobi wars were fought, I wasn't kidding. Thesis WR Hawk's. I see. Omoi's eyes narrowed. All invasions in the past were carried out by moving either a massive number of shinobi on the ground or smaller ones at certain particular periods. Depending on the country involved, it could either be a logistical dream or a nightmare. Imagine the surprise of the other hidden villages when they see hundreds of our shinobi descending from the air right on their village. Most wars were fought in the country. Rarely were they in the interior of the village. With this it's. Omoi trailed off, seemingly in awe. It was now that Karui and Samui caught on completely. You're right, Omoi. Multiply the number of eagles you saw by 3. 5. 7. 9. All carrying full payloads of our forces just itching to spill some blood. They wouldn't know what hit them, until it was far too late. Sensei, wouldn't that work only once? Karui asked. I mean, say the reverse, heaven forbid, happened to us and we managed to drive them off. Wouldn't the first thing you do is come up with strategies to defeat and prevent such a thing from either happening again or to yourself? Obano nodded, having expected this question. While your logic is sound, it assumes two things: 1, that we aren't aware of some potential weaknesses, and 2, that the other hidden villages have ways to counter us in the air. Quite frankly, they don't. Unless they have aerial summoning contracts, then they're quite at the disadvantage. Most solutions would probably be thought up on the fly without any true proper testing. In war, you don't get the luxury of testing out new concepts efficiently. That's why we have the advantage. We've been testing this for half a decade and ironed out a lot of kinks through trial and error. As successful as that jump was, there are a lot of flaws that still need testing. Team Omoi nodded in acknowledgement. The four-man team watched as the first wing secured the base from all sides as part of their drills. The demonstration was effectively over and Team Omoi, along with the other new arrivals, started to disperse back to their barracks or duty stations for the night. You know, off all the things I had expected, this was near the bottom, honestly, Samui blandly admitted. Giant eagles, the sky raining men, almost enough to make a girl have a heart attack, she joked. Omoi smirked. Considering how easily you can be scared, I'm surprised it hasn't happened, yet. The blonde looked offended. Hey! I do not scare easily. She felt someone poke her in the back with a boo. She immediately shrieked, causing her teammates and sensei to laugh hysterically. Samui flushed red in embarrassment. That's not funny. Karui was holding her sides, leaning on the only male in the team for support. Sure it isn't, Samui, she retorted back, still laughing at her expense. Samui huffed and started to walk a bit faster toward Obano's private quarters. Said Jounan's laughter was reduced to simple chuckles. Oh, man. That was great, he breathed out before wiping a tear from his eye. Come on, guys. Let's head inside and get some rest. You all have a big day tomorrow. Omoi raised an eyebrow. I thought we weren't going to leave until next week. Karui looked at Obano, hopeful. She couldn't stand this hellhole they called a base. Who said we were leaving? Obano grinned at the looks of horror on their faces. We're training. Normally, the two would have been ecstatic about training, but he had expected them to perform well in near sub-zero temperatures with snow. They barely could train competently back in Kyumo during the winter. No offense, sensei, but are you fucking crazy? Karui exclaimed. Obano looked at her coolly. Nope. Believe me, I don't like the weather as much as you guys, but at least this will give you experience to how fight in Arctic warfare. Omoi and Karui sighed and nodded in acceptance. Whatever, Obano clucked his teeth. Better to get it over with than to constantly dread it. The Emerald Fong grinned and placed both his hands on their heads as they headed inside. Besides, you never know what we might discover out there. Obano had no idea how right he was. Yuki no Kuni, 5 kilometers from Alpha Base, 1,100 hours, next day, Team Omoi trod through the seemingly endless snowy mountains of Yuki no Kuni. Even with the extra layers of clothing, they could still feel the frigid temperatures. Surprisingly, they weren't complaining about the freezing cold, but more of the long hike they had taken. Come on, sensei. Can we please stop for a break? Karui whined as she dragged her feet through the snow. Omoi heaved a long sigh. As much as he hated to agree with Karui's complaining, he, too, started getting a bit annoyed. They'd hike, go over some drills, hike, go over more drills, and then hike some more. It was getting extremely tedious. Sensei, we've been walking for at least 20 miles, with barely any breaks. Have a heart? Samui asked, giving him a look. Obano sighed. They were right, they did need some rest. However, he still wanted to explore the valley. Knowledge of this place could come quite handy way down the line. All right, fine. You guys can rest, but we still need to keep moving, he told them paradoxically. As expected, they all looked confused. We need to rest. But keep moving? How in the hell does that work? Obano smiled to them and bit his thumb hard enough to draw blood. Who said anything about us walking? Huh? The Jounin just shook his head and went through 5-hand seals. Boar. Dog. Bird. Monkey. Ram. Kuchi-os no jutsu, summoning technique, he exclaimed and slammed his hand into the freezing snow. A large plume of smoke covered the area at which he stood. When the smoke had finally cleared, all three of their eyes collectively went as wide as saucers. Their sensei was sitting in a panther. An all-black, yellow-eyed, one-story-tall panther to be exact. Omoi barely came up to the big cat's massive shoulders. Its paws looked sharp enough to rip through solid steel if the situation came down to it. Karui gulped. Sensei, what is that? The panther seemed to snort. You didn't even tell your pupils about me, Obano? I'm hurt? Samui's eyes bulged out of her sockets. It talks? The panther smiled, showing all its fangs. Yup. And I also have a very well-rounded diet, too. The blonde kunoichi looked fearful at that statement. Okay, Daisuke, stop scaring my students, would ya? Obano groaned at his personal summon. The new addition, Daisuke, seemed to pout. I was kidding, I wouldn't eat them unless, of course, you told me to. Daisuke grinned and Obano palmed his face. Would you focus, please? The Emerald Fang pleaded, jumping down from Daisuke's back. Even as tall as he was, the panther still towered over his summoner like a giant. The enlarged feline's response was to simply purr mockingly, causing Obano to simply jab him in the shoulder. He only snickered in response. Team Omoi simply stared dumbly at the duo. For a panther that looked like it could rip a fully grown male elephant to shreds easily, it acted more like a common overgrown house cat. That could talk. Anyway, this is Daisuke, my personal summon. He's going to give us a ride up through the underpass. I am, the panther incredulously responded, scratching his ears. Obano ignored him. It shouldn't be that difficult for him. So without further ado, let's go. Sensei, didn't you tell us you had a summoning contract for panthers? Omoi dully asked. He got a grin in return. You never asked. All three palmed their faces. They should have immediately expected that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, all aboard the Kitty Express. Daisuke grinned and sat down on all fours. With a bit of hesitation, the three climbed on top, taking note at how soft his fur was. You know, for a talking panther you seem to act like a common house cat, Karui noted. The black panther just snorted. I find it more amusing and fun. You should have seen me when I was teenager. I was such a downer. Trust me, he was, Obano groaned, climbing back on as the summon rose to its full height. Couldn't get him to laugh for anything, and now he won't stop making gags about scared prey. I enjoy the taste of humans when they're trembling in fear, Daisuke boringly replied. Team Omoi looked at him in horror. That was a joke, he flatly retorted. They all collectively moaned. Right, Obano clucked his teeth. Let's just get going. Daisuke grinned and took off without warning, seemingly a black blur in the blizzard conditions in the high mountains. Kumogakure, 4th District, Darui's residence, February. The heir to the Black Lightning stood in silence as he watched his beloved younger sibling sleep peacefully. Small dried tear marks adorned his cheeks. The girl had another seizure that he was barely able to contain. Her neurological disorder grew worse as the countdown to her final days came closer and closer. It was wearing down the Jounin. He could hardly focus on missions anymore, because his sister was so sick and she could die at any moment. If she were to pass on without him being there while he was away, he didn't know what he would do. Mental breakdown? Suicide? Retiring early? Who knows? They were all distinct possibilities. Darui sighed in defeat, yet again, and made his way out of the room. He needed some sake to drown out some of his sorrows. Making his way to the kitchen, the lazy-eyed Jounin poured himself a glass of alcohol and downed it in one go. It's sad to see yourself in this state, Darui, a cold voice said that made his skin crawl. He turned around sharply and his eyes greatly expanded. Standing in the middle of his living room was the ultranationalist leader, himself. Hideyoshi, he spat venomously, causing the Akechi clan head to smirk. What the hell are you doing in my home? Get out, before I make you. He gritted his teeth. Hideyoshi couldn't help but chuckle. You really think you could defeat me? Moreover, do you really wish to battle me with your sister in the other room? Darui's glower turned murderous. You even touch one hair on her head, and I swear to the fucking gods, I'll kill you, he roared as his chakra started to spike a bit. The ultranationalist looked amused at the black lightning heir's thinly veiled threat. Is that so? And here I was wanting to have a simple chat with you, he faked being hurt. The Jounin growled. And why would I want to have a chat with a psychopathic monster as yourself, he reasoned, clenching his fists. Now, the clan head looked genuinely offended as he gave a death glare to the ninja. Is that what you think? That I have no morals, convictions, or noble goals? What a truly naive and myopic view you have of the world. Darui actually scoffed. You? Having a noble goal? Don't make me laugh. You and the rest of your bastard party want to enact genocide and probably have committed unthinkable atrocities. And what of the atrocities here at home, Darui? He rhetorically quipped, skillfully dodging his question. Do you not think it's wrong that the Hokage literally does nothing to help those at the bottom of the food chain and yet he complains to you that he's scared shitless about us taking over? Darui's eyes widened. How do you know about that? Who else would he express his grievances to? You're one of his most trusted Jounin, Hideyoshi replied, and then smirked. At least for now, you are. The ashen-haired nin's eyes narrowed to slits. Just what the hell are you talking about? Hideyoshi paced around the room. Is it not obvious as to why I'm here? I want you to join us in our cause to right the wrongs this village has suffered under his rule. Darui actually looked at the Akechi leader in complete disgust. Me? Join you? You must be out of your ever-forsaken mind if you think I'll betray my village and turn it into one of your disposable pawns. And there's absolutely nothing I could say to change your mind? Hideyoshi inquired, inwardly grinning wickedly. Darui glared mercilessly. Fuck no. What if I knew a way to save your sister? That statement stopped the black lightning heir cold as his eyes rounding out in complete and utter shock. WHWH what? He stuttered out, flabbergasted. Hideyoshi smirked evilly. He had him. Yes, Darui. I know of a way to save your sister. Not one of those temporary treatments like A's doctors were given. I'm talking about a full-blown, genuine, honest-to-the-gods cure. As in when she receives it, it will be as if she never had the disease in the first place. You're lying. My sister's disease is incurable. She only. Darui couldn't help but to break down right then. In a way, Hideyoshi honestly couldn't help but to feel sorry for the Jounin. Perhaps he wasn't as cold-hearted as he made himself out to be. He inwardly sighed and banished that thought and kept a strong stoic face. Incurable, you say? Hideyoshi rhetorically asked. And who, pray tell, told you that lie? A lie? It's not. Tell me, Darui, what were the political affiliations of the doctors who diagnosed Ayasaki with her disease, Although the question came out normal, it was meant to be semi-rhetorical. Just what the hell are you implying? Darui angrily roared. Hideyoshi ignored him. Outside of the scrolls they gave you about her illness, did you ever do any third-party research? Went to the library to find more information on it? Or did you just blindly accept what they sent you and how to take care of her? A lump was caught in Darui's throat as his face locked up in shock. 2. He couldn't even begin to speak words. He was so focused on taking care of his sister that he never bothered to gain any more knowledge on the disease than necessary. Hideyoshi continued. You didn't, did you? It was a gambit on the Hokage's part, but it seems he played a successful hand and Lady Luck shined on him at this moment. He knows you would do anything for your sister. Even put her above the village. Shut up, he softly bit out. That you would do anything for her, go through hell and back just to see her smile. You were, and still are, a valuable asset to both him and the village. Shut up. This time, it was bit more forced, backed with a rising flood of emotion swelling up from within. You would, wouldn't you? You would betray your own principles if it meant seeing your sister happy again. So that's why I said, shut up. Darui roared. This time Hideyoshi did grow quiet, simply to allow what he had said to process through Darui's mind. Slowly calming himself down, he asked the Akechi clan head the million ryu question. What did he do? It wasn't that he exactly believed the clan head, it was just that there was no evidence that disproved what he said, either. Hideyoshi allowed a small smile to contort on his face. He had the real, and luring him in like a hungry fish made it that much easier. He was sure of it. Very well, then. Do you realize what a valuable asset you are to the village, no? You were the student of the Sandaime Raikage, who inherited his prized Kurwa Kaminari, Black Lightning. You know that must have meant something to the Raikage. He needed you on his side. There were two problems though: the fact that you were politically neutral and, most importantly, Ayasaki. He knew, as well as anyone with half a brain cell did, that you would put Ayasaki above anyone and everyone. Believe it or not, when Ayasaki became ill, it was a godsend to the Raikage. He seized this opportunity. While you were grieving at the diagnosis, he ordered the doctors in the hospital to tell you that her disease was terminal when in fact it wasn't. That statement sent shockwaves through the Jounin as he began to shake his head in denial. Having expected this kind of reaction, Hideyoshi continued, unperturbed. You see, Darui needed you to be loyal, and your sister essentially dictated to whom you held loyalty. It was understandable, admirable, even. I don't even have to guess where you got the medication that supposedly treated the severe effects of her disease, and you were told it was giving her some time, right? Darui had a slight downcast look on his face, and his solemn expression told all. I see. So, you did. I have to say, the Raikage took a huge gamble with you. If you were to read up on her disease, it's difficult to cure completely, but it is indeed possible. So, you see, Darui? The Raikage wasn't trying to save your sister. He was waiting for her to die. So, in essence, you would have no one to dictate your loyalties, and it would, by default, go back to him. Don't believe me? Recall every time you mentioned your sister in casual conversation, did you ever watch his reactions? Or did you notice but never thought much of them? Darui's eyes widened in shock. It was true. Every time he mentioned Ayasaki, he would always see some sweat roll down his brow and he'd start getting a bit nervous. Every single time he always skillfully changed the subject. The ashen-haired Jounin fell to his knees, the betrayal cutting him deep. See, Darui? The Raikage is not the man you think he is. This is politics. No side is above getting down and dirty, even if that means people, even ones as young as Ayasaki, are involved and have nothing to do with it. He was willing to sacrifice a 13-year-old, innocent girl for the sake of having a valuable asset. Hideyoshi then huffed. And people say that I'm cruel, he snorted at the hypocrisy. Darui clenched his fists. He wanted to deny it. Tell the man that he was a liar and wanted to forcefully kick him out of his house, but he knew, deep down, that what the man said was the truth. He gnashed together his teeth. So in light of this, here's what I'm offering. In exchange for us curing Ayasaki, you will become one of us. You'll talk like a UC member, walk like one. But your loyalties lie with us. Too, Darui couldn't help but to just feel conflicted. Could he really go along with the goals of the ultranationalists? Become a cold-blood sociopath, who felt no remorse for the killings of their perceived enemies, political or otherwise? Then, the Sadesho's words rained in his head. What good are those principles if your sister ends up dead because you failed to act? Damn it! Hideyoshi. Darui began softly after a heavy sigh. When and only when I see that my sister is cured. He closed his eyes as tears rolled down his face, then I'll pledge my full and complete loyalty to the organization. When you all do take over the village, you won't get any interference from me. In fact, I'll help. It felt so alien saying those words. He felt sick to his stomach. He had basically admitted to extend his services and abilities for treasonous acts. Hideyoshi refused to smirk, as that facial expression would have caused the Jounin to likely distrust him. He simply nodded. Thank you, Darui. I shall make arrangements for the process to be done here, so you can watch us the entire time. Is that acceptable? Darui nodded weakly, not feeling well enough to verbally respond to the Akechi clan head. Very well, then, Hideyoshi acknowledged. Continue to act normal for now, until it's the right time. I bid you good night. The clan head vanished in a flock of white feathers. The Black Lightning Heir slowly picked himself from the ground as he slowly made his way back toward Ayasaki's room. The dark-skinned Jounin was wobbling, as if he were drunk, but the recent revelation that the Raikage had been using him the entire time. He felt numb and he looked pale as he leaned against the doorway. He watched his sleeping sibling with blurred vision. Darui shakily made his way over to her bed and nearly collapsed on top of her, letting his tears flow freely. The very village he had vowed to protect had betrayed him. Now, he had pledged to end the status quo and installing a new power-all for the sake of his sister. Even Isuhi's eyes widened in horror. He had completely forgotten about the commander. He hated the ultranationalists with a passion. When he learned he was on their side, would he hate him, too? What about Ayasaki? Would he simply throw away everything because of a justifiable switch of allegiance? Darui then looked back at his sister and balled his fists up in anger. No, for her, I don't care what happens. Even if I have to go through you, Sodesho the Raikage will pay dearly for what he's done. That much I'm sure of. Even if I have to go through your entire fucking Black Ops division, he will pay for this. The Jounin didn't necessarily like Hideyoshi, nor did he fully trust him. But if the man was genuine with his desire to heal Ayasaki of her ailment in exchange for loyalty, so be it. If I have to become a monster to save you, Ayasaki, then I shall. I just made a deal with the devil. But that's nothing compared to the hell A is going to experience, he thought vengefully. There was no use denying it, anymore. Darui, the heir to the Black Lightning, elite Jounin in Kumogakure, A's former right-hand man, was now officially a member of the Ultranationalist Party. The very same organization that, 3 months ago, he tried to prevent from taking power, and was now a member of that organization whose goal was simple: remove Killer A as the Raikage permanently and establish the Ultranationalists as the supreme rulers of the village. The Black Lightning Heir was going to make sure it happened. A wasn't going to live long enough to regret this mistake. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. If you want early updates, check out Patreon. This is Fox Sage, and I'm signing off.